hearing.
hearings.
That's all
Somebody
we've
has
got.
to drive you home.
Yeah.
So you go home and you're,
And you
my
can even
eyes
ask
were
that. You
just
can just say, hey, look,
watering.
a couple of little
The
clarifications.
numbing thing worked for like 40 minutes.
I don't think they're so
on our
rigid that they
ride
should stop
home.
the public
I
hearing.
get
We might get more
home,
feedback at a
and
public
I
hearing.
said to Ella,
I wanna make
I was
changes
going to
after the
help you
public hearing.
unload the
That's why
car,
we have
honey,
them.
but I can't. I got to go because we went to Costco before we went to get it done. And I went upstairs into my bedroom and I laid in bed, and right away you have to put these 2 kinds of drops in it twice a day, and it's basically to ensure you don't get an infection.
It's gonna be tough.
So long story, and to take down the swelling. So you do that for a week, but I would do it again. They just want you resting the day of the surgery, and then you wake up the next day, and I could see. I woke up that night, wanted to eat because I was hungry. I got up, I got my own bowl of cereal, got the milk, and I was just like, "This is
And write a
amazing."
motion for the zoning.
But then I go, "But everything close is really weird."
Tonight
And
is gonna be a long
oh well,
meeting.
tomorrow it'll be better.
Yeah.
Tomorrow wasn't better, but the pain was all gone. All of it was gone. No, I highly recommend it. But you got to go to find out if you're a candidate, because you might not be a candidate. So, $4,000.
Director
was
Akers?
The most expensive one, which was the Contura, where the machine is doing the cutting. And then it's free enhancements for life. Yeah. One of
Screens? Good evening. Welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2025. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Sherry Budd,
Here.
Bernie Grant,
Here.
Peter Creel,
Here.
Medina Atchison,
Here.
Paul is excused, Jeff Jar,
Here.
Brian Cullen.
Here. At this time, we have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion concerning the agenda?
Through the chair, I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion and support for approval of the agenda as presented. Any discussions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next up is the minutes. We have approval of 2 sets of minutes, I see. First up, the regular meeting of January 22nd, 2025. Do I have a motion concerning it?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of January 22nd, 2025 as submitted.
Support.
I have a motion support. All right, do we have any discussion, corrections concerning the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Second up is approval of minutes from the joint meeting of January 29th, 2025. I would entertain a motion concerning it.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve those minutes as well, sir.
As well.
Okay, we have a motion, excuse me, and support to approve the minutes from the joint meeting of January 29th, 2025. Any additions, corrections? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any correspondence or announcements at this point?
Correspondence related to the public hearing, but I'll read it at that time.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no others, moving ahead, public hearing. Case 25-002-10401 Belleville Road, rezoning request. A request by L Car Wash, Michigan, Belleville LLC, on behalf of property owner M&S Karana Investment LLC to rezone the parcel described as parcel ID number V-125-83-058-99-0014-002 from RM Multiple Family Residential to C1 General Business. The parcel is 1.14 acres in area. The parcel is located on the east side of Belleville Road, south of Westlake Circle. We are open the public hearing. I need a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Motion, we open the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I support that motion.
Motion by Treasurer Bud and support by Commissioner Jar to open the public hearing. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, do we have any public comment at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I did receive a letter earlier today regarding the L Car Wash rezoning request. The letter was in opposition to the request. And it's actually a two-page letter. It goes in and discusses a number of things. I don't know if the Planning Commission wants me to read it in the record. I am going to make sure the letter's scanned and emailed out to all the planning commissioners. Unfortunately, I don't have enough hard copies here at the moment, but I can read it if the Planning Commission would like. Otherwise, we can send it out later.
Please read it.
There's an action item, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, there's an action item for considering recommendation of this request tonight, right, on the agenda?
I believe.
Then I think we should hear the letter.
Okay. Yes, it is item number 4 tonight.
So the letter is comment on case 2502, L Car Wash rezoning request to the Van Buren Township Planning Commission. My name is Brian Solomon, and I am the managing member of Waterworks Auto Wash. I am a third-generation car wash operator. Our family has operated car washes in Van Buren Township and the city of Belleville for over 60 years, and our family has lived in the township for 5 generations. I apologize for my absence this evening, as I don't have the heart to watch the commission approve what may be the death knell for our business. As you may know, Waterworks Auto Wash is located on Belleville Road across the street from Meyer. Unfortunately, upon the review of the agenda for the Planning Commission for February 26, 2025, I see that there is another proposed car wash on Belleville Road, a quarter mile away from Waterworks Auto Wash. This proposed car wash is backed by private equity and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. This proposed car wash is in addition to another approved and under construction car wash on Belleville Road, less than 1/2 mile away. In short, should this rezoning request be approved, there will be 3 car washes in less than a mile from each other offering the same services. In the past decade, there has been an explosion of growth in the car wash business, so much so that a significant number of municipalities across the nation that have placed prohibitions on the approval of new car washes. Take, for example, Cape Coral, Florida, where in 2024, the city council banned new car washes due to oversaturation in the market, a market where L Car Wash has a significant presence. Cape Coral had a car wash density of approximately 1 car wash per 8,000 residents when the prohibition was put into place. Should the proposed car wash be ultimately approved here, we will have a car wash density in the Van Buren Township, City of Belleville area of 1 car wash per 5,500 residents. This per capita number does not include the new car wash under construction at Sumter Bemis, nor the car wash on Grove just a few hundred yards from the western end of the township, nor the 2 new car washes that have recently opened on Michigan Avenue in Canton Township. Speaking of Canton, should this new car wash be approved, Van Buren Township will have 3 times more car washes per capita than our neighbor, which has 1 car wash per approximately 16,500 residents. We will have nearly 7 times more car washes per capita than the city of Ann Arbor, which has 1 car wash per approximately 40,000 residents. Based on the 2020 U.S. Census data, there is 1 car wash per approximately 20,000 people in the United States. The car wash industry at large has recently suggested that there should be no more than 1 car wash per 10,000 residents of a municipality, which is to ensure that there is not oversaturation in the market. Once a car wash is constructed, there is no other use for the building. This is unlike nearly all types of other commercial real estate that can be easily repurposed for different tenants. If, as has been shown in other areas of the country, when a car wash closes, there can be no other use for that building unless it is completely removed. There are a number of examples in the surrounding communities. The industry may be in the boom phase, but there will inevitably be bust. While it may be easy for those on the commission to see this rezoning request as just another opportunity to develop a vacant parcel, especially with a sleek presentation from those that do such things for a living, it is much more than that to us and our employees. Our livelihoods will be impacted in a way that is hard to put into words, and our survival as a local business will be in question. It is in the purview of the commission to determine land use for the best interest of its residents and community at large. Should this rezoning request be approved, the tri-community will have more car washes than grocery stores, pharmacies, urgent cares, dentists, and even McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, and Taco Bell's combined. In the 1970s and 80s, the commercial real estate market boomed with malls and Kmart's. The Kmart off Rawsonville now sits vacant. The 90s and 2000s saw explosive growth with a Rite Aid pharmacy on every corner. The Rite Aid on Rawsonville now sits vacant. The 2010s through the present decade is seeing private equity attempt to put car washes a stone's throw away from each other. While we at Waterworks have weathered recessions, industry downturns, and everything else that can be thrown at a small business, this will be unlike anything we faced before. I ask that the commission consider what happened to Belleville Hardware after Menards opened. What happened to many of our Main Street locally owned and operated small businesses once the big box chains moved into our community? The answer is that they're no longer part of our community. I implore the commission to look at potential alternative uses for this parcel and to decline the request for rezoning based on the proposed use of the parcel. At the very least, the commission should take the time to look at whether the township and its residents are best served by putting another car wash at this site for all the reasons set forth above. Sincerely, Brian M. Sullivan, Managing Member, Waterworks Auto Wash.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the public who'd like to offer comments? Anybody want to speak on this issue? Anyone else to speak on the issue? Anybody on Zoom, Director?
There's no attendees on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move to close the public hearing.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, supported by Commissioner Grant, to close the public hearing. Any comments, questions? All in favor to close, signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Okay, moving ahead. I don't see anything listed under old business, so we are now on new business. Item number 1, case 22015, Pulte Homes of Michigan, Cedar Chase. First up is to amend the special land use for minor PUD amendment. Then we'll be looking at amended preliminary site condominium approval and amended preliminary PUD site plan approval. A request by applicant Pulte Homes of Michigan, LLC, on behalf of Cedar Chase for approval of a special land use, site condominium, and preliminary PUD site plan resulting from a minor amendment to previously approved PUD to construct 88 detached single-family dwelling units on individual site condominium lots. Excuse me. The site is located at parcel ID number V125-83-040-99-0002-704 and V125-83-040-99-0002-705. Do we have a presentation by Township staff and consultants?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will refer to our Township Planner, Ms. Krishnan.
Director Aker, members of the commission. The applicant Pulte Homes is seeking amended planned residential development, planned preliminary site plan, and condominium plan approval for Cedar Chase. If the Planning Commission recollects, in October 2024, the applicant received approval from the Board of Trustees for an amended PRD agreement from the Board of Trustees. The site was originally and is part of the Walden Woods PRD. In November of 2024, they received preliminary approval for an amended PRD site plan to amend the original Walden Woods PRD. That amendment replaced a portion of the Walden Woods PRD that was originally approved for multiple family residential dwellings and a commercial development with a new PRD that had 88 detached single-family residential dwelling units. The Planning Commission made a recommendation to approve the amended PRD and the site condominium to the Township Board of Trustees, and you granted the applicant preliminary site plan approval. The applicant, however, before they went to the Board of Trustees, in the meantime, they did additional wetland delineation on the property. During the process of wetland delineation, they found several additional impacted wetlands. And some of these wetlands were significantly impacted wetlands that Eagle required preservation of these wetlands, as a result of which the applicant had to make changes on the preliminary approved site plan. Since this project was significant enough that the Planning Commission had reviewed this in detail, we believed any change to the project needed to come back before you so that the Planning Commission can see it again. So the change to the preliminary plan included reducing the number of units that you had previously approved. It went down from 88 to 75 units. So 13 single-family units got reduced. They rerouted a planned road. It did not change the essential layout of the roads itself, but sort of the roads, the configuration of it slightly changed. And it also provided several new areas of wetland mitigation. So the amount of open space area on the project increased compared to what was previously shown to you. So since these are the changes in the project, we believed overall the way the site appeared before you as they showed it on their preliminary plan was different enough that we thought the right thing to do was to bring them back before you for preliminary site plan approval. Since this is a PRD project, in order to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, we thought they should come back before you for preliminary site condominium and special land use approval again, even though the use by itself has not changed. It's better to just put them through the process again so everything is done correctly again through the whole process. And Pulte was amenable to going through the whole process again. So I will just summarize the details of the project, which essentially have not changed since you originally looked at it. With regard to PRD eligibility itself, the minimum development size for a PRD is 40 acres. The original Walden Woods PUD is 142 acres, so this site actually meets the minimum requirement easily. However, the original note on the plan set that you saw still needs to be deleted and corrected. That was when they were planning to seek a modification and split this off separately, so that needs to be corrected and will be done before they come before you for final approval. With regard to open space calculation, this PRD, as part of the Walden Woods, exceeds the minimum required open space, which further increases with additional wetland mitigation being done. So the numbers have to be revised in order to reflect the additional wetlands that they have added to their open space preservation. They have a separate wetlands map showing how much more they are adding to the open space, but the overall calculations have not been corrected to reflect the additional open space that they're preserving. So they need to adjust those numbers to show these small wetland areas that they're adding to the whole number itself. With regard to density, the Walden Woods PUD was approved with 301 single-family units, 200 multiple family units, and 10.3 acres of commercial development. The total number of dwelling units approved was 501. Of all of those units approved, only the 301 single-family dwelling units were constructed. The rest of it never materialized. The applicant's proposal previously included 88 units, as I mentioned, for a total of 389 units, which has now been reduced to 75 single-family units for a total of 376 units, which is well below the originally approved 501 units. So there is no density bonus being sought by this PRD. All of the minor details that are required to be added to the plans as a PRD are actually on the project itself. With regard to stormwater detention, utilities, and any engineering issues, I would defer to the township's engineer. Road access, overall, the layout of the roads and the access to Tyler and Morton Taylor does not change on this project. The internal road configuration has been slightly modified because of the way the new wetlands that were identified on the site are laid out. The applicant still intends to pave the roadway all the way from the intersection of Morton Taylor and Tyler till the entrance of the subdivisions, Heatherfield Boulevard, all the way to the north itself. The applicant has reached out to Wayne County regarding the possibility of adding a traffic light at the intersection of Morton Taylor and Tyler. Since the applicant got their preliminary approval, we have had the opportunity, myself and Director Akers, to talk to a couple of other developers who have also spoken to Wayne County. It is our understanding that as of this moment, the traffic numbers are just not there for Wayne County to justify adding a traffic light at that intersection, so Wayne County will not be doing that. At some point of time, the traffic numbers will be there for Wayne County to actually add that light, but right now those numbers are not there, so Wayne County will not be doing it. So the applicant just has to wait till there is sufficient trigger down that road for it to happen. With regard to sidewalks and pedestrian circulation, the PRD includes provision of 5-foot wide concrete sidewalks along all street frontages, including Morton Taylor and Tyler roads, sidewalks along both sides of all interior streets. Master deed, bylaws, and PRD agreement, all of those documents will be revised and submitted along with the condominium documents prior to final site plan and condominium approval. Detailed landscaping plan has been submitted, which we did review. None of that has changed since your preliminary site plan approval. We will review that once again before it comes to you for final plan approval to make sure it is consistent. With regard to the development-wide dimensions, the deviations that they previously sought from you remain the same. When they came before you last time, the Planning Commission had expressed some concern regarding the proximity of 2 of the units to the drain easement itself. The Planning Commission was concerned whether the basements on these units would even be feasible because of how close they were to the drain, and that was something the applicant was exploring the possibility of, and they would be coming back with information to you with regard to whether extra care needed to be taken while excavating those basements or whether those 2 homes would not be having basements because of how close they were to the drain itself. Part of the project itself requires the applicant cleaning up the McLaugherty drain that is along the entire site's frontage, which will benefit all of the subdivisions and developments that are located along Tyler Road, because McLaugherty drain has got a history of getting backed up and has been a long time in not being cleaned, so the applicant will be contributing to cleaning that up. The amenities that are proposed for the subdivision include a public park on the interior, playscapes, parklets, maintenance of open space, and preserved trees. This is in addition to required plantings and pedestrian circulation throughout the site itself. This is a phased project with phase 1, in which lots 1 through 38 will be built, and in phase 2, lots 39 through 75 will be built. A note has been added that each phase will be standalone, which means all of the roadways, all of the utilities, everything will be completed. So at no point of time when a phase is completed will the project look like it's been abandoned or left incomplete. Signage, the applicant is still working on signage and the current placement of the sign. This is something we discussed with the Planning Commission. The way the ordinance is written at this time requires the sign to be placed so far back that it's actually not even going to be visible from the road. So it's something we have got to work about fixing the ordinance so that the sign actually serves the purpose it is intended for. So it's something we will be bringing back before the Planning Commission to fix the ordinance before the applicant reaches the point where they actually have to build that sign. Performance guarantee is something that the township will handle at the time of construction. These are the site plan requirements. In addition to this, we have condominium development. Those are the PUD development standards. In addition to this, we have condominium and site plan review standards, all of which also the applicant is required to meet. Some of these require deviations, which the Planning Commission had previously reviewed and approved some of these deviations. There was significant discussion with regard to architectural features on the proposed elevations. The applicant had appeared before the Planning Commission on numerous occasions, and in response to the Planning Commission's feedback, actually gone back and drafted some new building designs where the garage was not the prominent feature of the dwelling, where actually the front entrance to the dwelling itself would be the prominent feature, where the homes were built with porches, the garage doors were architectural features, architecturally enhanced garage doors, where the buildings had more color to them, where the materials used were enhanced. The Planning Commission had also discussed about providing more detailed facades on the backs of the lots that were facing Tyler Road. I believe Chair had expressed a concern that you do not want to see blank facades while driving down Tyler Road, and that is something the applicant had indicated that they would be looking into when they came for final site plan approval. They are still working on that part of it. The applicant will be working on engineering. That is still a step that they will be proceeding to next after preliminary approval is done. So at this time, the applicant is back before you for revised preliminary plan approval. So our recommendation is for the Planning Commission to take several steps. Recommend approval of Cedar Chase PRD and amendment to the Walden Woods PRD to the Board of Trustees, subject to all conditions of site plan approval. Recommend approval of Cedar Chase site condominium proposal to the Board of Trustees, subject to all conditions of site plan approval. Recommend approval of the following requested dimensional deviations from the PRD and site condominium standards to the Board of Trustees as listed in the McKenna review letter dated February 5th of 2024, and grant preliminary site plan approval subject to the applicant addressing all of the conditions that are noted in our review letter dated February 5th of 2024. Most of these conditions are carried over from the time you previously reviewed this project. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kramer, do you have anything to add as far as the engineering is concerned?
Thank you, Chair. You will notice our letter is still dated from the previous review. It's dated November 7th, 2024. We did look at the updated plans, but had no additional comments to what was already previously mentioned as conditions to the site plan. There were some minor changes with some utility configurations, but in general, the main engineering aspects of the preliminary review remain the same. So we don't offer any more comments to our previously recommended approval of the site plan.
Thank you. Director Akers.
So I'll go over some provisions for the February 12th, 2025 Fire Department letter for Cedar Chase. So the status of the review is that the Fire Marshal's recommended approval. He did add add some additional comments that some of his prior comments were addressed, that they had indicated they were going to add a fire hydrant off Tyler Road, that they complied with some of the no parking fire lane requirements. The fire truck details had been compliant. They did the fire marshal added a note at the end of the letter that the amended set of plans dated January 14th or January 24th, 25 were received on February 11th and reviewed. For fire code compliance, the changes made to the latest submittal involved reducing the number of dwelling units on the north side of the complex and rerouting the street around a wetland area. The proposed curve of the street will not impede fire department access or have a negative effect on the water supply. So they are concurrent with the changes.
Thank you. I guess that leads us now, excuse me, to presentation by the applicant.
Not coming up? Good evening. Joe Score, Pulte Homes of Michigan. So I don't have a lot to add. I think Vidya did a comprehensive analysis and presentation relative to our plan. But I think it might be informative just to kind of take a look at the before and after relative to the changes that were made. Obviously, the location of the site is at the corner of Morton Taylor Road and Tyler Road. As you can see, the left plan is what was previously before you in, I believe, November. The right is the new plan. As you can see, it's, for all intents and purposes, it's substantially similar to the old plan. Some of the changes, as were mentioned, first, density. Density went down by 13 units from 88 to 75. We had an increase or corresponding increase in open space from 33% to 40%. We preserved some additional natural features of the site, woods and wetlands in the northern section of the site, as you can see. As mentioned earlier, we had the road network is substantially the same, but it does have a minor reconfiguration relative to those natural features in the northern section of the site. There was some also, relative to this new plan, a minor reconfiguration of the detention ponds. Other than that, the plan is, again, very similar to the earlier approved plan. This slide just speaks to some of the amenities and some of the community benefits associated with our proposal. No changes there, except for, of course, additional open space and additional trees and wetland preservation. And that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Jarr.
Question for engineering or possibly the applicant. The detention pond is smaller. Is that because there's fewer houses on the site now?
I will let my engineer speak to that.
So if you can see from this slide right here, the detention pond was more linear, less efficient, but maybe it looks like it takes up more room. We actually had to remove some lots here to create this more of a box. So the areas are roughly the same. The calculations work out, yeah, it is a little less dense lots, but the detention basins are very similar in size. They may be slightly smaller because of the less impervious area on the site, but they're relatively the same size. These are skinnier and longer. These are fatter and shorter.
Anybody else? Questions?
Through Chair, yeah, just a confirmation, the lot sizes are just some of them reduced in size, or is it all of them? Did I read this right?
I don't believe that's correct.
Okay.
The lot sizes remain the same. The only thing that changed relative to lots is the density. We have fewer lots, but the lot sizes remain the same.
Okay. I just a general comment. I think the more recent updated one is much better design. I mean, straight roads with houses is, and to save some of the additional wooded area, it's much better. Just better design.
Commissioner Jarr, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Krishnan brought up an issue with the signage for the site and that we might need to make a change to an ordinance in order to have a functional sign.
Yeah.
Is that this parcel or because of the ponds, or why does the signage that we have in the ordinance work everywhere else but not here?
Actually, it doesn't work everywhere else. We have just not had.
It was a leading question, I apologize, but if you could explain it.
Our ordinance says that the signage for a residential district must be placed at a setback of 30 feet. We have just not had a new subdivision come in a long time. At a setback of 30 feet, the sign is not even going to be visible to people. They're going to drive past it before they know they have even passed. So this is the first project that's come in a really long time when we realized, well, ordinance is not really functional. So time to revisit and fix the ordinance. So
I have a question regarding you know, it takes time for us to draft new ordinance language, to have public review, public
Yes.
comment. It goes in front of the board. The process is repeated there too. Is this sign setback something that the applicant could fix with a variance request until, you know, in lieu of us fixing the ordinance? I'm concerned about his development time. You know, I don't want to slow him down.
I think by the time the applicant finishes their engineering and their final and their pre-con and comes to a sign, we'll have a new ordinance in place long before that.
Okay?
Variance, no, I'm not a fan of variances.
No,
I'm
ma-
sure,
and
I'm
you
sure
kn-
we'll efficiently get this done. I shall work on it right away.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
For the record, that signage is important to us, so we would hope that it becomes, you know, you do execute on that, yeah.
Great.
Anyone else? Comments?
I guess I have one more technical or a procedural question. The request is still on the agenda listed as a previously approved PUD to construct 88 units. Now we're down to 75.
Yes.
Should that be reflected in any motion that we make in the positive or negative?
If you would make a motion based on the recommendation that is there in the review letter.
It makes no mention of the number of units. Is that the case? Doesn't it? You're talking about this? It doesn't say anything about the number of units, whereas all the previous ones all gave permission to construct a 88 detached, single-family.
If you could
Dwelling.
add that in, if you would use this recommendation and add that in as 75
As
units. that would-
75?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Anyone else?
Through the chair, I do have one last question.
Okay.
This is for planner video. In the chart here, just for clarification, it says, I think I got the wrong one here. Oh, there it is. It says the lot area, and it says minimum, maximum, 10,000 square feet proposed. It says eligible for deviation. What is that? What is that?
Standard.
Under the site plan standards, under the particular provision of 6.203, some provisions in the ordinance are eligible for deviation, others are not. If it's not eligible for a deviation, the only way you can get it is you have to go for a variance. If it's eligible for a deviation, Planning Commission can make that recommendation.
Okay, so, but the lot sizes aren't changing.
No, they are not changing. These are things that you acted on previously, you're just
Okay,
continuing
that,
the
I
same.
just want to be clear. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing none, do we have a motion on this issue? Or, excuse me, first up, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak? I apologize. Anyone in the public that would like to speak? Anyone in the public? Seeing none? Okay, I would entertain motion concerning this. It looks like we have 3 things to consider along the way. So, do we have any action by the commission?
Is this 3 separate motions or one singular thing?
It in one motion by listing all 3, one by one.
Okay.
Like it's itemized as 3 different things.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jarrett.
I would entertain a motion. Forgive me, I'm going to go with, not with what I had proposed, but with the recommendation from our consultant. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I'm reading.
That works.
Yeah.
That works.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we recommend to the Township Board of Trustees that we One, recommend approval of the Cedar Chase PRD and amendment to the Walden Woods PRD to the Board of Trustees, subject to all conditions of the site plan approval. That we, two, recommend approval of Cedar Chase site condominium proposal to the Board of Trustees, subject to all conditions of site plan approval. Three, recommend approval of the following requested dimensions and deviations from the PRD and site plan condominium standards to the Board of Trustees. That would be minimum lot width, minimum side yard setback, minimum rear yard setback, minimum perimeter setback from public roads, minimum setback from drains, basins, and easements, with a recommendation to increase the separation distance between the edge of the McClary drain easement and the building footprints on units 30 and 4 to the extent feasible, the minimum building separation, and the minimum lot area. And 4, we grant preliminary site plan approval for Cedar Chase PRD and site condominium, subject to the applicant addressing all conditions noted in the underlined text above for the construction of 75 detached single-family dwelling units on individual site condominium lots.
Bravo.
Hey, fantastic.
Somehow, I didn't write it, I just,
You pulled that one well.
yeah, I would also like to add to that motion that they should be subject to, based on the analysis, and subject to the conditions outlined in the McKenna letter of February 5th, 2025, and the Van Buren Fire Marshal's letter of February 12th, 2025. And that, I believe, is the motion.
Support.
We have a motion and a support. Motion by Commissioner Jar, supported by Commissioner Grant. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Peter Creel,
Yes.
Grant. Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Medina Atchison,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. We've got you taken care of. Yes, I'm sorry that you had to lose those. Nothing we can control, right?
It's a nice design, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, it is. I
looks
do
good.
like I like the curve in that road that's there. At least aerially, it looks good. Okay, moving ahead. Item number 2. Case 24-013, Waller Irrigation Pond. A request by applicant Todd Waller for approval to construct 1 5-acre agricultural irrigation pond across portions of the following parcels, which have a total combined area of plus or minus 33.5 acres and are zoned AG Agricultural and Estates. The site is located at 47990 Martz Road and 48196 Martz Road on parcels V 125, 83, 125, 99, 0012, 000, and V 125, 83, 125, 99, 0015, 701. Could we have a presentation by the township staff, please?
So what I'll do is I'll go through my review letter, February 9th, 2025, and then we'll go ahead and look through some of the supporting materials. So owner Todd Waller has applied seeking a pond and excavation permit for the proposed activities on 2 parcels off Martz Road, just west of Elwell, and those parcels are listed in the staff report. The applicant proposes to dig a roughly 4.88 acre pond for irrigating crops and relocating excavated materials off-site. Under a separate report and review process, the Board of Trustees have approved an application for the removal of soils from the site as part of the construction of the pond. Some irrigation activities are authorized under the Michigan's Right to Farm Act. However, local ordinances which address requirements for irrigation ponds and excavation activities apply. Irrigation ponds are subject to a construction permit and review by the Planning Commission based on Section 42, Article 4 of the Township Code of Ordinances. The purpose of this report is to request the Planning Commission to consider granting a permit for the irrigation pond. So what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll highlight some of the underlying comments that are in the report, and I'll summarize it. So an application form has been submitted, which has been signed by owner Todd Waller. After review of the property ownership records, it shows that the property is owned by Todd Waller and another individual, Kenny Farmer. Kenny Farmer will either need to submit a letter indicating they agree with the proposed work, or will need to sign the application. So that's going to be a recommended condition of approval. Under sheet 2, it indicates that the ponds will not be closer than 50 feet from any proposed structure, closer than 50 feet from any telephone, electrical, or other utility line of any recorded easement, or closer than 75 feet from any septic field. So the proposed pond is located well over 100 feet from a road right-of-way, more than 30 feet from rear lot line. The ordinance requires lost my place. The ordinance requires 60-foot setback from side lot lines. The plan shows a 60-foot wide band around the irrigation pond, which is not labeled, but is placed 50 feet from the east side property line. Clarification is required if the 60-foot band is part of the irrigation pond, in which case the pond size or slope may need to be adjusted to comply with the required setback. The applicant has previously stated at public meetings that the purpose for the pond is for irrigation purposes and that they intend to have a pump and infrastructure related to this pump on site. However, the site plan does not indicate any of this information, and due to this, the applicant will need to update their site plan to include any of this proposed infrastructure. Another comment with regards to state of Michigan regulations. The state of Michigan has regulations specified for irrigation use in accordance with Part 327 of the National Resources Environmental Protection Act 94. All properties with capacity to withdraw more than 100,000 gallons of water per day averaged over any consecutive 30-day period, or i.e. all properties with at least 70 gallons per minute or more in pump capacity are required to be registered and have their water use reported annually to the state by the property owner. This requirement applies to all agricultural water uses, e.g. irrigation, i.e. irrigation, crop cooling, animal watering, and withdrawals from all water sources, natural, man-made, surface water bodies, and groundwater. It is not clear from the submitted information as to the volume of water withdrawal capacity of a 4.8 acre pond, but staff will request that prior to beginning construction of the pond, the applicant will provide information regarding the water withdrawal capacity and a determination as to whether or not they're required to register with Eagle for a water withdrawal permit. If they are required to, they will need to provide Eagle authorization prior to proceeding. Section 42-213A2 of the Township's Pond Ordinance specifies that the Planning Commission may require a construction bond in the name of the township as beneficiary and still establish the amount and duration of such bond. Based on this section, the Planning Commission may require a bond for the construction of the project if they choose so. In our initial reviews, we had put information together. It was assumed that the applicant would be required to obtain a soil erosion permit from Wayne County, which that permit does require a bond. But the applicant has demonstrated during the township board meeting that they are exempt from obtaining a soil erosion permit because the pond is an agricultural use. This comment changed from a prior report. I just wanted to highlight that the Planning Commission does have the ability under the ordinance to request a construction bond if they so choose. Consistent with the requirements of 42-213A of the Township Code, the Planning Commission may require a hydrological survey to provide evidence of any potential adverse impacts. The applicant, and their comment was the applicant must provide some information regarding drainage design. The pond water level is shown at 684 with the groundwater level at an elevation of 687, resulting in a pond with 12 feet of standing water. Information regarding what happens when the pond fills up with water, how would the water be discharged, et cetera, must be provided to make sure that it will not result in any flooding. One comment, the last comment before the recommendations with regards to fencing, and this was addressed by the Township Board approval and the review letter. As is a concern for the Planning Commission, in prior letters, we do indicate that the Planning Commission should recommend the Township Board that the applicant construct a 42-inch to 72-inch fence along these pond areas, which are adjacent to residential properties, and that we had made the recommendation the fencing can be of a material which is compliant with the allowable materials in the AG Agricultural District. So this was included in the staff report that went before the Township Board for approval. So before the pond is constructed, the applicant will need to put up at least a 4-foot fence. The materials of the fence are variable because our agricultural district allows for different types of materials. So it could be chain link, it can be any number of materials, but those are all allowed in residential and agricultural districts. So based on the analysis, the recommendation that's offered out of the staff report is for the Planning Commission to consider approval with the following conditions: is that compliance with 60-foot setback requirement from the east and southwest side lot lines. The applicant shall have the owner of record, Kenny Farmer, sign the permit application or submit a letter indicating they are authorizing the scope of work. Prior to project closeout and use of the irrigation pond, the engineering certification letter shall be provided. This letter shall state that the pond poses no negative downstream drainage impacts, which references adjacent land elevation data and as-built elevation data for the pond's freeboard, lowest top of bank, and bottom elevations as necessary. The proposed pond shall not detrimentally impact the surface or groundwaters of subject properties or other nearby properties. No excavation may be performed in such a manner that runoff, overflow, spillage, or seepage encroaches on property owned by another person. The pond shall not detrimentally impact aqueous or subaqueous areas of the applicant's property or adjoining properties. We did add a comment that if by some chance there is a soil erosion permit required, it must be obtained prior to the commencement of construction. Although the applicant has verified that they are not required to do that. The applicant shall provide estimated completion time of the total project. The site plan will need to be updated prior to the beginning of construction of the pond to include any pump houses or other locations of irrigation infrastructure on the property. Prior to beginning construction of the pond, the applicant will provide information regarding water withdrawal capacity and a determination as to whether or not they are required to register with Eagle for a water withdrawal permit. If they are required to, they will need to provide Eagle authorization prior to the beginning of construction. And then the Planning Commission recommends that the excavation permit include the construction of a fence along the southeast and west portions of the pond. And as I had indicated before, the Planning Commission does have the authority under this ordinance to request a bond if they so choose. If a bond is requested, the Planning Commission will need to specify how long and the duration of that bond. So that's the review letter that I've provided. I've also included some additional information in the packet. We've included the application, the construction plans, the board action, the January 21st, 2025 meeting minutes from the Township Board meeting where that excavation permit was approved. We've included our excavation permit review, an email from Mr. Waller specifying that the pond is for irrigation purposes, where Mr. Farmer was copied on the initial letter. We did provide a letter from Mr. Waller's attorney specifying that the intended use of the pond was for irrigation. We provided an affidavit from the individual who was farming the site, that they were actively farming the site. And then we included a copy of the irrigation and water use generally accepted agricultural maintenance practices, which for Right to Farm Act purposes are the guidelines that need to be followed if protection under the Right to Farm Act is to obtain protection under the Right to Farm Act. So that completes my summary. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Director Akers. We now have presentation by the applicant.
Evening, everybody. Todd Waller. I really don't have a presentation much more than one we had the last time I was here. Pretty much I'm farming my 37 acres. Need to irrigate it from time to time. So it's not like it's going to be a constant flow of water. It says need. If it's raining, I don't need to irrigate. If it's dry, then I'll need to. So it's pretty basic, pretty simple. Not flooding anybody's property off. I've done this already in this township without just a couple years ago for my neighbor. Matter of fact, didn't have much issue. So if any questions you guys have for me, I guess I'll do the best I can to answer for you.
Okay, commissioners, questions, comments? I have one. Why 5 acres? You're only irrigating 37 or 35 acres or 33 acres. Why 5 acres? That's 16% of your land.
Well, the last couple of years, you know, the water table's been really low, so we haven't had much water. So there's your number one big problem. So I'll cut out 3 acres of my property. The water runs dry. I could have used that 2 extra acres.
Granted, but I've talked to some other people in the area, and their ponds are 2-3 acres, and they're irrigating over 200 acres.
It also depends on what they're irrigating, how often they have to use it. Every situation's different.
What are you going to be irrigating?
I was planning to do some golf course sod. I got corn in there. I got beans in there now, or not now, but last year had beans. And like I said, we had a dry year. It started off dry, ended up wet. It's variable.
Oh, I understand. I know quite a few of the farmers in the area, so.
Like I say, I had approval to do 2 of these ponds on Hall Road and Hall Road and Sumter. I dug one of them. The farmer didn't want the second one dug. No issues. There was no issues. In and out. I'd move right around the corner, and now all these extra stipulations are going in. I understand they don't want people mining or digging or whatever they consider doing, but I'm farming. You know, if I knew that they didn't want me to farm, I wouldn't even bought the property. Okay, I got 40 acres at my one place on Button. I have 100 acres on Harris Road. I have 37 acres here. I got 20 acres up north. My partner's got another 40 acres on Willow Road. So it's not like I'm not doing this to not farm. I'm farming.
Mm-hmm.
And the only hindering I'm having now, I'm a year behind schedule now for what I'm doing. I lost a crop last year because of this. I hope not to do it. I'm gonna lose my crop again this year because of this. So
So if you'd have been able to plant a year ago, the sod would have come in
I was able
to be
get-
marketable this year?
Correct, but now I'm not. Now I'm stuck. So it is what it is. Water under the bridge this time. I just like to get some water in my pond now.
Well, I also understand that there is horizontal irrigation system at that property. Am I correct?
No, there is none. It's not. There's none there. Only water's there comes off the road. I'm not buying it from the city. So I'm not doing anything out of what's not within my rights as farming.
No, I heard there was a horizontal well that was there.
Told you that.
It was informed to me.
Well, who informed you of that?
Someone.
Well, they misinformed you.
Okay, well, I apologize. That was
That's
what I was
what I
told.
was just wondering who informed you, so they know this, they're misinformed you there.
So you need 5 acres to irrigate 30 when other side applications don't have that volume?
Who told you this?
Turf, what is it, the Turf Producers Institute?
You have that study?
I don't have it in front of me, but I contacted them.
Well,
And they told me that bent grass doesn't require a lot of water. It just needs to be done on a daily basis in order for the root system to get deep enough.
Okay. Do you have that study?
That's one that I've
So I'm
known for 25 years.
so I'm supposed to base my living off of what you think?
Not what I think, it's what I've been told.
Well, okay, that's fine. Well, do you have that study? I do this for a living.
I
farm,
understand.
so I know what it's like to run when your crops run dry.
I understand. I've talked to other farmers in the same situation. I just want to know what volume of water is needed for maintaining bent grass sod.
As much as possible. You don't want to run out. You want to get to the point where it's like, well, damn, I need more water, and I don't have it now.
I understand, but 5 acres, that's 370,000 gallons of water that you're holding.
if it's full, unless we have a dry season.
And how is the pond going to fill? I don't know.
Please be patient. Please be patient with me, and because some of these comments and questions you ask are basic knowledge to me. So to some people, it's not. Okay, and I explained this once before. You have groundwater, right? It sets at a certain level. You're not going to dig a hole and it's going to start geysing up out of the ground.
Right, it's going to seep out to a,
Set at the level that it is, right? So what happens is, and I have to use this again, you take a cup, right? You have beer in this cup. You pour beer into this glass. You have foam on top of it that makes the foam, right? So the beer would be your water. The foam would be your soil. You have to excavate the soil.
I understand.
All right. So then what happens is when you excavate and remove the soil, the seepage of the water in the surrounding area levels off at whatever the water table is. So if the water table's right at the top, wherever it sits, that's where your water table is. If it's 10 feet down, that's where it's at.
Okay, where is the water table here?
Now, it's wintertime. You can
Well-
probably dig 2 feet and you're at the water table. You wait till the summertime, you'll dig down 8 feet. When I did Hall Road, I went down 11 feet before I hit water.
Okay. Then the seepage will fill and stay
At the water table. It doesn't change. Whatever the water table is where the water level is. So if the water table's high, like it is at this time of the year, that's where it's going to be at. When it comes July, if we don't
Okay.
get any rain, it's going to be right down to nothing.
Okay.
So that's the way it works.
I thought there was a standard table height for water. I don't know.
Oh, I
thought
can,
there-
that's fair, that's fair. And I'm not used to people not knowing, so that this, because like I said to me, I played in the dirt as a kid, so we dug a hole and here comes water,
I lived right over here, grew up right over here, and yeah, we dug and found water more than once.
Well, how do you not know that?
I don't know what the,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Mr. Waller, the water table's at a certain level on that property. How come you can't just drop in a well? I'm surprised that you get all your water on that property from rainfall. When you got water at a water table, why don't you just dig a couple of wells? I'm just trying to
No,
understand the
that's
process.
a good, fair question. Where I dug the pond on Hall Road, they had 2 or 3 wells dug at the same place. They don't work. It's good. He'd run out of water.
Is that because the water table has fallen, or is it due to maintenance on the existing wells?
Well, there were new wells, so they weren't used.
They weren't done well, okay. All right. I have another question regarding the spoils from the pond. Why can't they stay on the land? I'm concerned, understand my concern. I don't understand it. I'm not a farmer and I'm not an excavator, so I don't understand the full details. But I want to know why does the dirt have to leave the land? I am concerned that you dig a pond, you'll run it agriculturally, you'll follow good practices. At some point, the property in the future will change hands, and then there's a disused agricultural pond next to a bunch of residential houses, and that can be an attractive nuisance for the neighbors.
Well,
I don't think you're going to fill the pond back in if you take the dirt away.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but if that was a situation when I get old, I'd like to sit back and look at a pond in my backyard.
I dig it. I understand that, but I want to know why are the spoils leaving?
Because, well, okay, here you go. You got a room full of dirt here,
Yeah.
right? This is where we're sitting at,
Uh-huh.
right? So you have to take this dirt and move it. Where are you going to put it on the property so you can utilize the area that you need?
It's so that you don't have a dirt pile.
Well, you have no place to put that much material.
Essentially, it's 5 acres upside down somewhere.
Yeah, you have to move it, exactly, very exactly. So it has to be removed. You have to remove spoils. Like I say, it's pretty basic. It's not,
Does that include the topsoil that you're going to be taking off to begin with?
any material that we take out of there is going to be removed off, so that we're not changing the elevation of the property, because you don't want to do that. Now you have an issue with your neighbors. Hey, you're flooding me out or whatever. So you need to remove the material. You can't stack that much material up on your property. If it was up to me, I'd build a berm around my place You know what I mean? With all that material, I have big nudist camp in that backyard. Nobody can see what I'm doing, but you can't. So, you know, got to remove the spoils. It's the same thing I just done on Hall Road. And I didn't have any issues over there. So I actually met some pretty good neighbors over there that I helped out when they needed some stuff done.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Director Akers. My understanding is that the Van Buren Township Board of Trustees has put up a moratorium on further pond requests. My understanding is that it doesn't apply to this request, but I was hoping if you could explain what does that mean for future pond requests? What was happening there? I wasn't at that meeting.
So one of the conversations we've had, and it's you know, this applicant is, or we've had applications over the past couple of years regarding ponds. And one of the comments that have been highlighted is that our pond ordinance and our excavation ordinance haven't been updated since the 1970s and 1980s. And since then, you know, all of the state environmental laws were consolidated into the Natural Resources Environmental Protection Act. There's been additional standards. There's been additional rules. We've had updated zoning codes. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure we were taking a look at those ordinances and making sure that they were not only consistent with some of the current laws and current codes, but we also wanted to make sure that there were added protections in there so that way we were considering you know, some of the factors that come up out of these conversations. So what we're doing right now is we're systematically going through some of the pond ordinances in adjacent communities and some of the guidelines that other communities have to try to see, you know, really just update our ordinances and make sure that they're able to be up to a standard of what we would look at for today. Yeah, I think that's a good summary. Sorry about that. Lost my train of thought.
Okay, I guess that answers the question. So currently, we're reviewing the pond standards, but because this application came in before then, there's no moratorium on this pond.
Yes, so the application, because the application came in earlier last year, the moratorium is only applying to new applications that we received after that January 21st date. So the Planning Commission does have the authority to act on this application, just as the Township Board did. So.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I do have a general question because I'm more curious than anything. Maybe you can answer it. Is there seems to be, if there's a moratorium, what's the concern about building ponds? I mean, I can estimate that when you dig a hole in the water table, it is exposed, that maybe it draws more water out of the aquifer, where maybe it brings it to more evaporation during the summertime when it's hot, so it lowers the water. It sort of speeds up the lowering of the water table to some degree, but that's the only thing I can think of. What are some of the other concerns?
So some of the standards that we have, I guess just to give an example, you know, we want to make sure we're reviewing all these with the updated standards to make sure that what our standards are in place align with what some of the current standards are. I know, like a lot of times with the detention ponds at you know, when we're reviewing some of these development projects, they have different slope standards and what our code requires. So we require a 1-on-6. This ordinance specifically allows a 1-on-4. That's just kind of an example. You know, there are some other provisions, like specifically with some of these irrigation use standards as well, that we've kind of been reviewing this and learning more about some of these pond permits, wanting to make sure that we're ensuring that our decisions are compliant with some of the state laws and requirements that have come about since then, and just make sure that, you know, we're protecting the public interests and lining ourselves up with, you know, and ensuring some of those properties are protected from some of the negative impacts that the ponds could have.
The chair.
Commissioner.
Hi, Mr. Weller.
Hello.
I don't want to insult your intelligence. You sound like a very smart man in regards to this, but I, as a child, did not play in the dirt. So my question is, you're going to dig this pond, where does this dirt go? Like, how do you dispose of it? Do you take it to the local dump?
No,
Where
I
does
have
it go?
different areas that I take care. I also own a trucking company too, so I have uses for material on a regular basis, so it helps on both ends. So if I'll leave what I can there, it'll be gone between now. A lot of it went to the neighbors. A lot of it, and the last one I did, hey, Mr. Waller, I need some material. Can you, for my backyard or whatever, I want to plant a tomato bed and stuff. So I dispersed it fairly amongst the community and just moved the rest out
Okay.
to whatever job sites.
Okay, that's a lot of dirt, though. Like, how much dirt do you think, are you estimating that's going to be?
He had a measurement. I don't have it with me right now. It's a significant amount of material,
So,
but it's going to take me about a year to get it out of there.
okay, my next question is regarding Kenny Farmer. Is he here? No, he's not?
He's not here today. They had a health family issue they had to tend to.
Is he in agreement with what you're doing?
Trust me, he's one. He's the one that gets me to come down here to do this. So yeah, we're in agreements with it. Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair.
Commissioner, or Treasurer Bud.
I guess my other question was, and I know they asked you about this last time, is what kind of pump house are you going to need to pump the water? Where that was going to be, if you're going to be doing grass, are you going to need a barn for your mowers and that kind of stuff? And where was all of that going to go in your basic layout?
Okay, well, I have a portable pump that I use along with the tractor, a water tractor. And so that's part of the irrigation for now that we're going to use. As far as any of equipment for lawnmowers, grass, that's another facility I keep that stuff at. So
Okay.
it's not nothing that has to be right on site. Really, as far as tending to sod, the stuff we have is nothing much more than a lawnmower and a sod cutter machine.
And I guess another concern, and it's not necessarily something that you can address, but the trucks going on our dirt roads is going to cause problems that we are going to hear about from the neighbors, I'm sure.
Yeah, everybody complains about trucks until they need one, so I'm
Well,
familiar with that.
Well, that's true, but you're going to be going through a residential area where they're going to contend with the dust, which is what is going to be the biggest complaint, is going to be the dust.
Right, so what we did was the same thing we did on Hall Road, Hall and Sumter. We split the routes up so we didn't have we're not coming in there gangbusting with 100 trucks at a time, so that's not going to happen. Only operated time is fair times of ordinance or hours of ordinance, which would be 7 to 4:30, 5 o'clock of evening time. So most of the people are already gone to work, and we're done by the time they get home. So and then we split the routes up on the trucks so that they're not constantly running down one area. So, and then I have none of my trucks come right through the city of Belleville. It just cuts back on aggravation and the complaints. So we'd run down Bemis Road to Haggerty or Bemis to Rawsonville. We'd split it up that way. So that way it just cuts back on the impact of traffic on the trucks. But it doesn't matter if you haul one truck or 20, you're going to get somebody that's going to complain. That's just what happens.
Yeah, that's what I worry about, because we.
Yes, nothing we can do about it. They're going to complain until they need that truck, you know?
Commissioner Jarrett.
I would make the comment to the applicant that one of the things we're charged with is protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So, anything that's causing the residents to complain, dust in the air is potentially a health issue. Trucks going down a small dirt road is potentially a safety issue. A stagnant ag pond disused in the future, I know you're going to use it, but we're a planning commission, we have to plan for the future. So we worried about these kind of things. This is the process we're going through when we're trying to figure out, your pond. I hope you appreciate that we're just trying to make sure we're doing the right thing by everybody in the community.
So,
I'd ask you though, how did you decide on 5 acres?
Well,
How come it's not 3 acres?
because 3 acres of water, 2 acres of water, you just answered your questions, is more likely to stagnate than a larger area that the wind continues to, you're right. Run by the lake, you see the wind, the rain caps,
Okay.
the wind carries it. So it's a natural aerator.
So you feel that a bigger
So you-
pond is less likely to be a nuisance in that regard?
No, it definitely is. So you answer your own question. That's a good question. And as far as the trucks up and down the road, you know, we run public roads, so it's the same. My trucks have the exact same right as UPS, FedEx, the school buses that run 90 miles an hour down the roads, you know, so.
Not our back roads.
Yeah, okay.
The kids would be in the ceiling.
Can I ask? I'm sorry. I just had a quick question with the truck traffic. Yeah, how is the volume of the truck traffic? Is it you know, a handful of trucks every day, or is it kind of intermittent? Like, you know,
It's
one day-
intermittent.
Okay.
One day you might see 10 trucks. One day you might see 2. You know what I mean? So I can't put a number on that exactly. If I could say I can get rid of this material in 3 months, 2 months, I'd have 100 trucks over there. But now you got a problem. Yes. That's my home there. You know what I mean? And I got neighbors there. So the couple of people live right in front of my place, I know very well. So they're friends of mine. I don't want to impact their day to day. I'm not too familiar with the neighbor just east of me, but you know, a couple houses before, one to the west of me, the property across the street. I take care of the horses over there for a friend of mine. So that's my neighborhood. I'm not going to shit on it.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate that too, but I also know you don't live there, sir.
Well, I don't live there, but either
You do
it's
not
still
live
it's still my place. I'm there on a regular basis. So
Right.
that's my neighbors. That's my home. So this is the community I grew up in. So it may not be my house where I dwell at, but this is my home.
Okay, but we do know you don't live there. And the gentleman that talked about his soybeans, he also told us that more than likely he wouldn't be planting anymore because you were gonna grow sods, so.
But he specifically told you that? Because I never told him that.
He did, he told us that.
Well, I never told him that, so
Well, but on the flip side, you just told us you're gonna do sod.
possibly, yeah. But either way, I'm farming. It doesn't matter if I
It
grew
does-
it doesn't matter if I grow carrots, if I can't grow cotton or tobacco, but it doesn't matter what crop I'm growing crops here, you know?
I didn't say it did, but we kind of have gotten twisted.
Do you think, and when I say people twist their stories, and I'm saying that they're lying, and I don't do that.
I'm not saying they're lying, I just said, he said one thing, you have said something else, and we're just clearing the situation up here.
I'm farming. That's it.
What have you farmed on your other properties?
Beans. I was going to plant sunflowers at my house on Bunton Road until the township that I live in started harassing me and messed me up. And that's why I was planting my sunflowers for, because my little girl passed away and I was going to plant sunflowers as kind of a memorial to my little girl that passed away, along with my father. So farming is a way of life, but there's a little bit more to it than just what you guys see. You know what I mean? It's not always about the money, because if you're rich, you wouldn't be a damn farmer. You know what I mean? So there's more to it than that. People that grow flowers, they farm, but they're not getting rich off of it. They're still farming. So it's crazy to me that I got to go through so much rigmarole to dig a pond. It just doesn't make sense.
Why didn't you choose a 6-acre pond?
Because I didn't want to get into dealing with the EPA. Because once you go bigger, then now you have to involve more problems. So instead of me having to deal with this, now I have to go deal with that too. This keeps me under the guidelines.
Okay, anybody else? Comments?
I have a question for Director Akers. You seemed in your letter that you recommended a construction bond. A construction bond is only valid for the period of the construction of the hole. It doesn't cover the removal of the pond. Is that correct?
No, it wouldn't cover the removal of the pond. And in that, my letter specified that the planning commission may require it because it's something that's required under the ordinance. Initially, we didn't recommend requiring construction bonds because I was under the impression they had to get a soil erosion permit from the county, and the county has some extensive bonding requirements. We found out that they're exempt from obtaining a soil erosion permit because it is an agricultural operation. The pond ordinance does give the planning commission the ability to request of that construction bond if they choose to. It's not necessarily a requirement. It's up to the planning commission's discretion.
They really constructing anything other than a hole?
No, not really. But it is a provision of the ordinance, and because it wasn't covered by the county permit, I wanted to highlight it.
The only thing it would be good for if you did it halfway and for some whatever reason you got hit by a bus or something and you had to fill it back up, put it back to where it was. Not saying it would be. I'm just saying.
A lot of this, to be honest with you, is a deterrent to quit me from doing this. This is
It sounds like-
bullshit for what it is, you know what I mean? And it's frustrating to me. And it's just a deterrent to stop me from doing this, is what it is. There's no reason I have to go through all this. There is absolutely none.
What does the Agricultural and the Farming Act have to say in regards to a performance bond? 0?
0.
Anyone else? Comments? Questions? Okay, anybody from the public have any comments or questions concerning this issue? Step up to the microphone, introduce yourself, please.
How y'all doing tonight? My name's Pete, last name Hafler. I'm a friend of Todd's. I can tell you the man is honest, upfront, and he'll do what he says. He has the right to farm under the Right to Farm Act. You guys ask questions about dust. I get it. I live on a dirt road. But I don't have nobody helping me with my dirt and my dust except for the county. You know, the buses come down there, like Todd said, they come flying down there, got dust. You got the road commission that comes down through there, they grade it, yeah, dust. You know, Todd said he would split up the routes, you know. Believe me, he's an upstanding guy. He'll do what's required of him. But he still is able to do what he wants to do under the Right to Farm Act.
Anyone else from the public? Comments? Anyone else? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, there are no attendees on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, I would entertain a motion concerning this issue.
Well, I think through the chair, I guess I don't see any reason not to support this. I mean, I know there's been a lot of questions, maybe more so just for information sharing, but my perspective is, just generally speaking, think it's a good thing, and I'd make a motion to that effect, unless somebody wants to speak up against that. The only question might be whether or not somebody really wants to ask for a construction bond or not, if that's something that they felt is necessary.
I don't think so.
And again, he's just pulling dirt out, so I don't think it is.
Bond for a hole.
Correct. That's,
Right.
I agree. So I'll make a motion. So I'd like to make a motion to grant the applicant Todd Waller approval to construct 1 5-acre agricultural irrigation pond across portions of parcels located at 47990 Martz Road and 48196 Martz Road. Parcels V125-83-125-99-0012-000 and V125-83-125-99-0000. -99-0015-701. Total combined area of, well, total acreage is 33.5 acres, but the pond is 5 acres. And it's zoned agricultural AG and estates. So,
Support.
Discussion?
Yes.
Can I propose an amendment
Sure.
to that? Just to approve based on or following the recommendations based on staff
Yes.
letter dated February 9th, 2025?
And maybe mention the fencing.
Could I also?
And that letter mentions the fencing,
Okay.
so. And I'm just worried about the co-owner signing off and all that stuff that's listed in his letter, so.
I'd also like to amend the motion to explicitly state that no construction bond is to be required. Since that was called out as a maybe in your letter.
right.
Support.
We have a motion and support, motion by Commissioner Grant, support by Commissioner Atchison. Any further discussion on the issue?
I look forward to amending our ordinances in the near future so that applicants like Mr. Waller don't have to go through this process of us asking pertinent questions that we need to ask in order for him to be able to do something like this.
Absolutely. With that in mind, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Bernie Grant,
Yes.
Peter Creel,
Yes?
Atchison,
Yes.
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. You have your approval, sir.
You all have a good evening. Thank you.
Okay, moving ahead. Case 21004, JSB Builders, LLC, final site plan non-compliance review. Sam Patel, on behalf of JSB Builders, appears before Planning Commission per code 12.205-6 of the zoning ordinance for non-compliance with terms of the site plan. The site plan is located at 6060 Schooner Drive on parcel V 125-83-018-99-0003-708. Presentation by Township staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my cover letter, and then I'll turn it over to our township planner, Ms. Krishnan, to highlight comments from the site compliance report. So there was some clarification requested from the last version of the packet as to what exactly township staff is asking the planning commission to consider for this request. So I apologize. We were able to draft a cover letter to highlight that. So JSB Builders LLC is before the Planning Commission for discussion and decision on how to address a few items on their site which are non-compliant with their approved site plan on their site. The information included in the packet is the site inspection report and the applicant's response to those items. Staff is requesting Planning Commission to consider the following site changes. So A, we're asking the Planning Commission to consider authorizing the on-site soil to remain in the form of a berm along the south property line to be planted in conformance to the zoning ordinance standards for berms and submission of a full cash bond to the township until that berm and landscaping are completed. And then item B is to render a determination on either requiring the applicant to close the access road to the parcel to the south with a row of bollards and restoring the area with long grass, or in the event that the applicant submits a complete site plan with application and fees for development of the property to the south within 6 months from the date of the Planning Commission meeting, allowing for the cleared tract to remain as is with the submittal of a cash bond for restoration of the area to long grass and installation of the bollards if the timeline is not met. In no case shall the access road area be used for outdoor storage or parking of any vehicles, equipment, trailers, or other industrial activity. Doing so shall subject the site owners to code enforcement proceedings from the township. The applicant has made, since the date of the original inspection, the applicant has made progress towards addressing several of the issues that were in the site inspection report. However, there are some items which still remain to be addressed. At this time, I will turn the review over to Ms. Krishnan for her summary.
Mr. Akers. So 6060 Schooner is a small industrial building, multi-tenant industrial building with the Planning Commission approved around 2021 or so. I went for the final site inspection towards the end of January. Typically, when we go for final site inspection, we check everything that the Planning Commission has on its approved site plan with actually what is being built. And only then do we sign off on it, and when they have met whatever the building official requires of them and the township engineer, only then are they granted a CFO for the building. So some of the things I noticed was that the main light pole at the entrance to the site was actually missing a fixture, and the pole was not properly attached. The fixtures that were on the building wall itself were not shielded fixtures. They were the shoebox fixtures that really shine out straight, not the kind that we typically expect. So I noted those. Then there was the fence. The fence did not look like it was in the proper location. The Planning Commission had approved that fence on the property line, the west property line. There is a single-family residential neighborhood to the west. Then the dumpster enclosure, it was built of block. The Planning Commission had approved it with a cap on top. There was no cap on top of the enclosure. The parking lot had not been seal coated. It just had the base coat, so it had not been completed or striped properly. The building address lettering, it was so tiny, I actually had to search where it was. It was actually on the building. But at night, if there is an emergency, it's difficult to see where the building address is. So I thought the better place for it should have actually been on the sign. So when you're driving down Schooner, you can see that this is 6060. Landscaping, I wasn't sure if all of the landscaping that was installed was actually the correct size. I couldn't make out because none of them had leaves on them, so I couldn't make out if actually the shrubs were the correct size. So a few months ago, the applicant had reached out to us to ask, there was a lot of dirt on the site. They did not want to spend the money to haul the dirt out. They asked if it was okay to build a berm along the south property line. Whenever an applicant chooses to want to put in additional landscaping, we always support it because we do like planting additional trees and additional landscaping. That area of the site was bare, so in discussion with Director Akers, we said, okay, you can put a berm on there as long as the berm is covered with lawn and it is planted to the berm standards in the zoning ordinance, which means there have to be trees and shrubs on the berm. This is in addition to the landscaping that's on the landscape plan that the Planning Commission approved. That would be okay. So when I went there, the berm was a pile of dirt that is incomplete, and there was a bulldozer sitting at a weird angle on one end of it, not completed. My biggest challenge was on the southwest corner of the site, there was a clearing to the parcel to the south. Parcel to the south is also owned by the applicant itself, and there was a clear 40-foot wide track going down all the way to the south. Once I did this review letter and I said the site does not comply, the applicant, the construction company, reached out to me to discuss each one of these issues. With regard to the lighting, since then, they have fixed the light pole and put the fixture on there. They're removing all of the light fixtures on the building and replacing it with the correct fixture that was on the approved site plan. They have ordered it. We will go back for inspection to make sure that the correct fixture that the Planning Commission approved will be on the building. The fencing apparently is not on the property line because there are a few large trees on the property line. Putting the fence on the property line would require removal of those large trees. Since there are single-family homes on the other side, I think it is okay to let those trees remove. I would rather not have the trees removed because they're protection for the homes. So I would recommend that the Planning Commission agree to leaving the fence where it is if it means saving a few of the established trees. The dumpster enclosure, per the applicant, the cap has been placed on the enclosure since this review letter was written, which we shall go and inspect. The parking lot has not yet been seal coated per the applicant. They will be doing that once the weather breaks, which will be inspected. Since this letter, a new address lettering has been added to the site sign in front, which is clearly legible. I have inspected that. The landscaping apparently is all the correct size that the Planning Commission had ordered. We will inspect that in spring to make sure once some leaves come onto the landscaping, because we cannot make out at this time. Per the applicant, the berm will be correctly graded and planted once spring comes. They will submit a bond at this time. And as Director Akers summarized in his letter, the applicant's explanation for the tree clearing is that they were required to install a water main connecting to an existing water line that goes on the south side of the southern parcel that they own in order to complete a water main loop required by the township, which is fine, but that was something they would have known before they came for final site plan approval before the Planning Commission, because that would have been done at engineering. They failed to show that on their final site plan that such a clearing is required. Apparently, the 40-foot wide access was required in order for them to bring their trucks or whatever they needed in order to dig the trench in order to put the water main. So it was necessary for utility work, but that doesn't excuse the fact that actually a clearing was put in, which the Planning Commission did not know about. So at this time, it is a clear-cut track. So it's up to the Planning Commission to make a determination. Would you like that area restored with grass? And would you like that access closed off with bollards put over there? Or if the applicant has any plans to develop the parcel immediately, you can allow the applicant the condition that within the next 6 months, if they were to formally submit a site plan with an application and a fee, not merely say we are going to turn in something, if they formally submit it in, you can allow the applicant a 6-month grant, in which time they can turn in the application. You can allow that access to remain as is, but with the condition that nothing shall be parked there that shall not be used as an extension of this industrial building that is on Schooner. So the Planning Commission has been very particular that applicants must adhere to an approved site plan. You have made that very clear on a couple of other projects. So we thought it was important to bring the applicant before you for an explanation for why there were so many deviations and provide direction on these 2 items. I'm happy to provide any clarification, and more importantly, for the applicant to provide you with clarification for what they did.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Director Akers?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, the applicant, is the applicant present?
My name is Jason Haney with Ronish Construction. We're the construction management company Mr. Patel hired to do his development there at 6060 Schooner. I'm here to answer any questions the committee has on any of the McKenna inspection reports and the issues that he had found to date.
Commissioners, floor is open.
Chair, I just have one question. Are you planning on any new development, in that area that was cleared or access to the adjoining land within the next 6 months?
Hi, my name's Scott Wright. We've met before. I'm Mr. Patel's architect, and I'll address that question.
Okay.
It's been a long process to get the building to where it is. So his intent always has been to develop the south side of the property once he leases out space within the existing building. So, the funds are rolling and he can then spend the money to develop the south side. So the intent is, yes, to do that. A time frame?
Could be.
I mean, if he had his druthers, he'd love to, go through this process this year and start building another building, but it all depends on how quickly he can lease the space out in the building.
Could be 6 months, it could be a year, 2 years,
I mean, you have had people inquire as to leasing the building, but they need to see everything, right?
Lease out, but a lot of other factor can impact the economies as well as how fast I feel that
Sure.
buildings.
That's it. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Is staff withholding a certificate of occupancy at this time due to the unfinished items?
Yes.
In the McKenna letter, I see that there was a recommendation that there shouldn't be any issuance of a certificate of occupancy until the violations are corrected and the applicant has appeared before the planning commission. He's here in front of the planning commission. But I think the clarification letter that Director Akers prefaced with her asking us to authorize the creation of the berm and coming up with a decision about what to do with the improperly cleared area to the south. Is it staff's intent to withhold the certificate of occupancy until the paving is complete and the berm is done?
No, so what we typically do, so with construction projects, a lot of times, you know, depending on the timing when the building is completed, we will request cash bonds for certain items that can't be done seasonally. So we'll get to a point where, you know, there may be some outstanding landscaping items, and we did the final inspection in January, can't plant till March. We come up with a cash value based on, we have some internal things we use, but we come up with a cash value for that landscaping and take a cash bond in lieu to be able to grant the certificate of occupancy. There are other things that need to be completed prior to doing certificate of occupancy, so they need to pass all of their building inspections, which I believe they either have or are in the process of doing. They also need to they need to have a final engineering walkthrough where our construction engineers who look at the site, they do a punch list, come up, you know, basically verify that the outside of the site is safe and ready to be used. So that's our typical process.
Would the top coating of the asphalt be considered an item that would be delayed seasonally? You'd give them a C of O, even though they can't, you guys can't put asphalt down in February, it's snowing, right?
So the asphalt plants don't open back up usually till April 15th. So we do require, as part of our development process, we have a performance bond for a lot of the paving work on site. So we already have security for that in place, and we don't release those until those are 100% completed.
I believe anything that is weather dependent, such as the landscape berm or the parking lot seal coating that are weather dependent that they cannot control, those are not reasons to hold back the CFO, but anything that is to do with building permits, safety, mechanical, electrical, those will be reasons to hold back the CFO. So I believe they have a whole bunch of inspections scheduled for tomorrow. So the building official will have to clear those for them to get even their temporary CFO. But the rest of it will be cash bond that Director Akers will make a determination
The
on.
issues with the street light not being powered up, the light packs aiming into the neighbor's yard, that would be reason to withhold the C of O?
Has to be there. Lighting and illumination has to be there for the site.
They're all construction-related issues that have nothing to do with us per se, because we only have three. You had two items. We have three that we have to make a decision on. The fence line, the berm, as he had mentioned, and the cleared area. That's really all because we have nothing to do with the C of O in this decision.
Correct. So we are requesting the Planning Commission to agree to leaving the fence where it is at this time, to agreeing for a bond, to agree to leave the dirt on there and to have it designed as a berm and ask for a cash bond for it to be designed at the berm. And since the applicant does not have a timeline at this time for development of the southern parcel, make it mandatory that the access road to the parcel to the south will be closed off. The area will be restored with grass, and a row of bollards will be installed, closing it off permanently for now.
Correct. And the only question I have to you is that following up the new berm, because it's new landscaping, do they follow up with an as-built, or is that something they have to resend in and get approved, or can they work with internally with staff?
They can work with staff. Once
Okay.
they've finished the site, they can give a final as-built site plan that will be entered in the file.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like these gentlemen came out here to stand in front of the Planning Commission. I almost owe them the question.
Yes.
How'd you get here? What happened? Why didn't you build it the way you said you were going to build it?
Reason, probably some good ones and some embarrassingly others. For example, the lighting. That was just an oversight on the lights that we were ordered the correct ones to meet the site electrical illumination. That was an oversight during the bidding process and ordering. So we put the building lights on, mistakenly overlooking the site lighting, which has been corrected. We ordered those on February 10th. We provided that order form. Actually, they show up on Friday this week, so come Monday, we can start putting those in. Other miscellaneous things were one of the largest things that you have in front of you is the clearing to the south. That was nothing malicious. That was, again, constructability, how much construction equipment we needed back there, and it just so happened we cleared a lot larger of an area than what the drawing had indicated. So we're looking to restore all that area, seed it, and talked about, putting bollards or trees, something there to block traffic from wanting to make the attempt to drive further south in that area. Just a handful of different items. Again, costs a lot of it, trying to do our due diligence for our owner, Mr. Patel, trying to save him money where we could. A couple of the issues alone just was trying to save him some money in the long run, so cost problems on the tail end.
Mr. Chairman, I just point out that if the applicant had brought those concerns to us ahead of time and asked for, it may have been handled at the staff level even.
Yes.
It wouldn't had to come here. So, something to think of for the future, right?
Why we have it, period. Because it's a site inspection, really. It's punch listing, whatever you want to call it.
You mentioned bollards on that access spur. Could they use trees as bollards?
Sure, they can plant trees and put grass down there to block it.
I'm thinking that might be if he's going to develop the southern parcel, if they plant 3 or 4 trees across there to stop traffic, or 5, whatever it takes, they could be transplanted then, I would believe, into the other part of the site.
Concern is, Mr. Cullen, I've never seen a developer offer to transplant trees. They just get ripped and thrown out. So I'm just thinking bollards might be easier to just take out and transplant, so, move over.
I understand.
Trees, yeah, if they want to put trees, that's fine by me, but they're just going to be tiny little twigs over there. Bollards, they're not going to try running them over.
If they put a 4-inch tree in, 4-inch caliper tree?
Oh, they're not going to put in 4-inch caliper? Yeah.
Well, they have to.
Whatever the ordinance is, a 2-inch.
Half-inch.
Yeah, 2.5.
2.5 inch.
Okay. I thought we had 4-inch on something.
I would love 4-inch trees.
It would be great. They'd be well growing at that point. Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask,
Yeah.
Hoping to put in evergreens,
Mhm.
3-inch caliper, how tall?
There's,
So I mean, they're significant, and you're probably right, we'd probably not transplant them. So it's, I mean, that.
I was trying to look at a way that we could save you some money and. Mhm.
The original site plan,
I would recommend,
that's what the purpose of that was for.
if,
It just happened to be able to be used to install the water main, which it got totally changed working with the county and the state. And to end up looping not only our property, but a property to the north. We were able to connect to them and loop them in too. So that was the best way to do that. So, we did have that on the final engineering drawings that went through approval.
I want to be careful this doesn't result in just 2 little twigs being planted over there just to meet the requirement. If we are going to be planting deciduous trees, there'll be 2.5-inch caliper trees placed 10 feet on center across the entire span of 40 feet with 5 feet on either side. If it's going to be evergreen trees, they're going to be minimum 6 feet tall, placed 5 feet on center in a double staggered row.
Well, anything they put in, don't they have to meet the ordinance?
We'll make it more dense. My only concern is that no vehicle tries to drive through because
Yeah, I know,
6
that's why I
feet
figured
are,
you put the bollards in there, 'cause then they can't they can't
bollards
pull
are
them out.
more sturdy. You can't really,
Well, don't forget, there's also a 6 or 8-inch concrete curb there that will help discourage people from wanting to drive.
I was there in my truck. It was unpaved. I climbed it. Be a deterrent.
The only comment I wanted to add is if we're gonna be, so the area where there is gravel, there's a water main that runs through there. And I'd have to look at the plans. I'm not sure what the depth of the water main is there, but I know we generally try to discourage planting trees on top of water main
That's- yeah.
easements. So just
Just be careful.
Do we have any other comments, questions?
I have a comment. I'm okay with the site, with the soil remaining on site as long as it's, you guys take care of bulldozing it and making it a berm. Seems like a reasonable plan, and it seems like our consultant and staff agree that it's acceptable. It'd be okay. You got to finish it, though. And with regard to the closing of the road, I really don't have a strong opinion about rows of bollards or evergreen trees, or if you want to take the second option about, a 6-month stay, as long as you're willing to submit the plans for the development of the second parcel. I think that the important part here is that you guys, if you're going to be developing the second parcel, you're going to come back here again, and we're going to go through the process again. And as long as you understand that when we do a final site plan, we really mean it. We review it and we mean it, and you've got to, don't put in any roads where you're not supposed to put in roads. If it's something like a site plan or a water main, you've run into an engineering problem, come talk to our staff. They're here for you. I'm sure that they would be willing to entertain any of the changes and bring it up earlier so that it doesn't have to happen, late here where it could potentially delay your occupancy. Other than that, I don't have a strong opinion in regards to bollards or trees, whatever the planning commission feels is best.
Whatever works for them, the best. And
I may request the water main, based upon what Paul pulled up, it's really close. The trees are more expensive too for them. Pulling out the trees and the water main is close. I would defer to Director Akers. We don't want any water main to be disturbed. 3 bollards would do the work for them. It's easier to take out too. Let's go with 3 bollards and leave it at that.
Okay.
I'm good with that, yeah. Yeah, we're good with that.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, how do we, the public, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this? Anyone in the public? Anyone? Then I would entertain.
Mr. Chair, in the matter of case 25-0, I'm sorry, in the case of, wrong page, guys. On the case of 21004, JSB Builders LLC, final site plan non-compliance review, I move that we authorize the on-site soil to remain in the form of a berm along the south side of the property line, and that a row of 3 bollards be erected to close the access road based on the analysis, of course, subject to the other conditions and recommendations that were detailed in the letter of staff from letter from McKenna, January 28th, 2025, and the cover letter from staff dated February 20, 2025.
Support with amendment? Do we need to address the fence location?
Yes.
We do.
Amend it with the fence.
I would support amending that with the fence in the correct location, subject to discussion after the motion.
And I do have a question. Should we say anything about the original site plan approval? Is this an amendment to that, or should we even call that out? Or is it necessary?
No, you're just authorizing these changes to the site. It should be okay.
Okay.
What did you say you wanted to do with the fence? What did you say?
You're authorizing the fence to remain where it has already been built.
So to clarify that motion, I move that we strike that first motion. I withdraw that first motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move in the matter of case 21004 JSB Builders LLC, final site plan noncompliance review, that we authorize the on-site soil to remain in a form of a berm as described in the letter of February 20th, 2025, that we allow the fence to remain where it is located currently on the plans, and that we require the installation of 3 bollards to close the access road based on the analysis and subject to the conditions in the McKenna letter dated January 28th, 2025, and the letter of staff cover letter dated February 20th, 2025. Did I get it right? And the berm. Yes, I said authorize the on-site soil to remain in the form of a berm. I think I got it right.
Support.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, supported by Commissioner Creel. Do we have any discussion on the motion? I do have a question I believe I can ask during this point. How far off is that fence from the property line?
I would say it's approximately, per the applicant, it is off by only 5 or 6 feet.
It's still on his property.
It is entirely on their property. Our concern,
Okay, that was just a clarification for me,
our
that's all.
concern was more the fact that it might create a dead zone on their property, because if it's on the other side of the fence, who's going to clean it? No, there's no chance of mowing it, it's just a lot of trees. We don't want it to be a place where trash gets collected. That was. Yeah, so it's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's entirely on their property.
It's just gonna be natural.
Okay. With that said, do we have any other discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Medina Atchison? Yes. Peter Creel?
Yes.
Bernie Grant?
Yes.
Sherry Budd?
Yes.
Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. You guys are set. Thank you.
See you at the next property.
In 6 months, or less.
Okay, moving ahead. Item number 4. Case 25-002, 10401 Belleville Road, rezoning request. A request by Elcar Wash Michigan Belleville LLC on behalf of property owner M&S Karana Investment LLC to rezone the parcel described as parcel ID number V125-83-058-99-0014-002 from RM Multiple Family Residential to C1 General Business. The parcel is 1.14 acres in area. The parcel is located on the east side of Belleville Road, south of Westlake Circle. First up, presentation by township staff. Director Akers.
I will defer to Ms. Krishnan.
Members of the commission, so we have reviewed an application as you had summarized. The site is zoned RM, Multiple Family Residential District at this time, and the applicant's request is to rezone it to C1 General Business District. This parcel is a shotgun parcel. It is long, narrow, and rectangular. It is approximately 1.14 acres with frontage onto Belleville Road. It's immediately south of Westlake Apartments, and it's across the street from the existing Tim Hortons. The property currently has a single-family home and an accessory structure, and the applicant's plan eventually is to construct a car wash facility. So the site is currently zoned RM Multiple Family. To the north, it's zoned RM Multiple Family. To the south is the C1 General Business. If you recollect, to the south, you recently approved the site plan for the Belleville Retail Shopping Center. To the east, it is zoned RM Multiple Family, which is where the Westlake Apartment sort of winds around. To the west, once again, it is zoned C1 General Business. In the future land use plan map, this site is zoned Gateway Commercial. To the south, it's zoned Gateway Commercial. To the west, it is zoned Gateway Commercial. To the east, it is zoned Town Center Edge. And to the south, and to the north, it is once again zoned Town Center Edge. That is the future land use plan map for this area. Now, the zoning ordinance has got specific requirements for a rezoning, and it specifically says that a legal description for the site must be provided on the parcel itself. So the applicant doesn't have a specific meets and bounds description, although they do have the tax parcel ID, which describes the parcel in its entirety. However, to meet the textbook requirement of the ordinance, a meets and bounds description is required. The zoning ordinance has got lots of detailed standards based upon which every request for rezoning is reviewed. The one thing I do want to clarify, although the request is by a car wash company, and the applicant's plan is for a car wash, this request is strictly for rezoning of the parcel only. It is not in any way, shape, or form a review of a car wash proposal. It is not an approval for a car wash use. It is only a review of the parcel from RM to C1. We are not looking at it as a car wash. The applicant has told us they're looking at it as a car wash. That is their prerogative to look at it as a car wash. We are not looking at it as a car wash. We're looking at it only as a C1 parcel. So the first standard is it consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the master plan itself? Now, the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act requires that any request for rezoning must be seen whether it is consistent with the master plan. If it's consistent with the master plan, you need to rezone the parcel to the correct designation. Although the applicant has not applied for site plan review, they have constantly said that their intention is to establish a car wash on the site. And in a concept plan that we have seen, it's a car wash in conjunction with a drive-through restaurant and a whole bunch of things that they want to do on this parcel. As I previously noted, the master plan designates the future land use of the subject site as gateway commercial. Gateway commercial is intended for a mix of big box retailers and smaller local specialty retail and restaurants. The gateway commercial designation typically corresponds to C2 zoning, which is extensive highway business district. But this site is bound on two sides by residential uses and C1 zoning to its entire south. Now, if you look on the west side of Belleville Road, it is all zoned C2, highway business, which is a much more intense commercial district. But the east side of Belleville Road is C1, gateway commercial. So the applicant is asking for gateway commercial, which is actually a one-step lesser commercial zoning designation than the C2, which is the west side of Belleville Road. We believe the request for rezoning to C1 is more consistent with the existing pattern of development and in general what the master plan recommends for the area, which is gateway commercial, which would translate to C2 and a lesser degree the C1 district also. Is it consistent with the basic intent and purpose of the zoning district itself? Now, the purpose of the zoning ordinance is to basically have regulations that would include design requirements for how structures must be built and how various uses must be conducted on a site itself. To that end, there are provisions in the ordinance for setbacks that regulate building height, land use, parking, loading, and all of this that will be reviewed whenever a project submits for site plan or special land use consideration, just like any use on this site must also submit at a future time when they go through that whole approval process. The intent of a C1 district is to permit a whole wide range of business, service, and entertainment uses that are typically found in major shopping center or central business districts at the junction of any major streets. These uses typically do generate large volumes of traffic and require detailed planning for access, parking, screening, and all of the other things that we typically look at any C1 uses. The next criteria is, does the capability of the street system safely and efficiently accommodate the traffic that would be expected of uses that would be permitted in the requested zoning district? Now, the site fronts on Belleville Road. In our future land use plan map, Belleville Road is designated as a principal arterial. A principal arterial, by its innate classification in our master plan, means a road that can accommodate high volumes of traffic. This is also, however, the site also has frontage on the unimproved McBride Road right-of-way on its south side. If you look at it, on its south and east. We do want to note there is a major concern that the site, the way it is located, is very close to the lighted intersection where Westlake Apartment comes out, and it's right opposite Tim Hortons. That is a very, very busy intersection. So vehicles that are turning left into the site and vehicles that are coming out of the site, all of them are going to be right there at this close intersection. We want to point that out at this time, just to make note that any development that will take place on the site in the future, we will be looking at a major traffic impact study, traffic circulation pattern for this site. Any use, whether it's a car wash, whether it's a restaurant, or whatever it is, will have to address a concern with regard to how traffic will move in and out of the site. We'll be looking at that. The fourth criteria is the capacity of the township's utilities and services to sufficiently serve this site. While not looking at the car wash specifically, a car wash typically does require significant water usage, and the most recent use of the site and the abutting properties was single-family residential. Single-family residential uses, their use of water and sewer is negligible compared to when you see a commercial use such as a car wash. It's significantly going to be much, much more. So any commercial use on this property will have to do massive utility upgrades in order to meet any commercial development's demand and requirements. So at this time, we will be deferring that portion of it to the Van Buren Department of Public Services and the township engineer, and any site plan when submitted will be reviewed by the township engineer for all of the utility upgrades that need to take place in this area. The next criteria is whether conditions have significantly changed since the zoning ordinance was adopted, or was there an error in the zoning ordinance that justifies the amendment. There was no error in the zoning ordinance because of which a rezoning is being done. Its conditions have, however, changed on Belleville Road, and over a period of time, over the past decade, Belleville Road has undergone change. It is our primary commercial corridor. It is where we have the Belleville Road Overlay District, and there are lots of new businesses that have come, and Belleville Road continues to evolve and get new businesses in it, and this is just a natural course of evolution where existing non-conforming single-family residential homes are leaving the place and getting converted to commercial developments. The next criteria is that the amendment will not result in exclusionary zoning. Now, exclusionary zoning basically means that it is a prohibition of a land use when there is a demonstrated need for the use in the community. Over the past several years, Van Buren has made a conscious effort to revitalize the community. We have a lot of uses coming in. That said, as was received during the public comment from the gentleman whose letter was read, how many car washes does a community need? So in this case, we are looking at this strictly as being rezoned to a C1 district. We have a lot of C1 zoned parcels, and the request for rezoning this parcel to a C1 is to allow for a whole host of C1 uses. At such time, when the applicant submits for consideration of site plan or special land use approval, a detailed market analysis study will be required to demonstrate need for the use. Is there one of the conditions and criteria for a conditional land uses? Is there a demonstrated need for the use in the community? The burden of proof is on the applicant to demonstrate whether there is such a need in the community, and the applicant will have to provide the necessary data to show that there is such a need in the community, and that will be reviewed at such time. So at this time, the rezoning is not to avoid any exclusionary zoning. We do have lots of parcels zoned C1, and the requested rezoning is consistent with what the master plan is requiring. If a rezoning is requested, compatibility with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features with the uses permitted in the zoning district. This parcel is primarily flat. There is nothing exceptional in terms of environmental features on the parcel itself. The next criteria is a list of principal permitted and special land uses in the C1 district. And as you can see, this is a very comprehensive zoning district with a massive list of uses that are permitted by right and a significant list of uses permitted by special land use, out of which car washes are a special land use, which means they have to go through a full process of public hearing at this, and they need final approval by the Township Board of Trustees after a recommendation from the Planning Commission itself. The next criteria is if a rezoning is requested, the boundaries of the requested rezoning will be reasonable in relation to the surrounding district itself. Now, the rezoning of the site to make it a C1 district is reasonable because, as I previously mentioned, it would make it contiguous with other C1 zoned parcels to its south. The entire portion south of this site is all zoned C1 currently. So it would create a whole contiguous C1 zoned section in our zoning map and would be consistent with what the master plan is recommending for this area itself. If the rezoning is requested, the requested zoning is more appropriate than any other zoning district. Technically, what the master plan recommends would possibly equate to a C2, a C2 would not be appropriate for this area because it would create an isolated pocket zone which exists on the other side of the street. C1 is more consistent and more appropriate, so we believe the request is appropriate for this area. The next is if a rezoning is requested, is it better to rezone the parcel or amend the existing zoning district? Now, we would never recommend amending the RM district to allow for car washes. It's a residential district, so rezoning it is a more appropriate thing to do. If the rezoning is requested, it would not create an isolated or incompatible zone in the neighborhood. That is not the case at this time. Based upon our review of the proposal and the standards that are listed in the ordinance, it is our recommendation at this time, primarily because the request is consistent with the master plan adopted by the Van Buren Township, that the applicant's request to rezone the site from RM multiple family to C1 general business district meets the zoning ordinance standards of section 12.504 A through L. It meets all of the standards, so we recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the requested amendment of the zoning map to the Township Board of Trustees to rezone the parcel as analyzed in the McKenna review letter dated February 19th of 2025, subject to a detailed legal description for the subject site being provided, with our note added that this is merely a request for rezoning. This is not approval of a car wash use. Any future use of the property will have to go through the full site plan and conditional land use approval process before the Planning Commission and the Township Board of Trustees. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Akers, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further.
Okay. The applicant is here. Presentation, please.
Will it just automatically, oh, there it goes. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Mitchell Harvey. I'm with Stonefield Engineering. Address is 555 Old Woodward, Birmingham, Michigan. A lot of my thunder was stolen from our presentation, but essentially what we're looking at is to rezone the 1.14 acre parcel at 10401 Belleville Road from multiple family to a C1 commercial designation. To the north is Westlake Apartments, including the access drive that is zoned multifamily. To the east is single-family residential along DeWitt Road here. And then to the south, we have Bell Tire, Auto Car Care, and some other C1 uses. And then obviously across the street is, or across Belleville Road is the Tim Hortons, the credit union there. There's a Applebee's, and then way over you have Walmart. So when we first looked at rezoning this piece, the first thing we look at is the future land use designation for this parcel. What we identified is that the master plan identifies this site to be planned as a gateway commercial. So this rezoning application is consistent with that designation between a gateway commercial and a general commercial district. We looked at this site as kind of this lighter red color is the C1 district. Across the street, you have that C2, that more intense zoning. And although the master plan identifies it as a gateway commercial, speaking with planning staff, we don't want to create a spot zoning situation here by having this be the more intense use. Also sensitive to the neighbors to the east of us. So we determined that a C1 would be most appropriate here. Kind of piggybacking off that, the other thing we look into is we're not creating a spot zone, and that's basically an island of one zoning. So again, we're just extending that C1 zone up to the north, the full width of the property, which is about 100 feet. And then the final thing that we look at is just the general corridor in the character of that corridor. So basically north of 94, the Belleville Road is largely a commercial corridor. We have drive-through restaurants, auto-oriented uses, big box stores. You have banks with drive-throughs, and just general retail kind of going up north along Belleville Road. And I don't think it is designed nor planned to ever be a single-family residential corridor here. And that's what we're working with today. This is a single-family lot. So we understand this is the very first step in this development. We know we're going to have to be back in front of you guys for planning commission, for site plan approval, special land use, and furthermore, we got to go to the board to get the rezone approved. But we look forward to presenting that project once we get to that point. This is really our first step, making sure that it's feasible to rezone this parcel. And beyond that, we're happy for the time and consideration in this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions?
Just to say, I don't really think I have any questions because it is only a rezoning. It meets our master plan. And so I would agree with the letter from our planners that it's the way it ought to go.
Through the chair, I would agree. I mean, this kind of makes sense with where it's at. Properties to the south and around, it makes sense to rezone. And if this is only rezoning, then I have no issue at all.
I just a question of curiosity. Who owns the Westlake Apartments? Does anyone know? It's a different owner than this property?
Yes.
Okay.
This project site is in the Belleville Road Overlay District, right?
Yes.
So any development that happened on it would have to be consistent with the terms of the Belleville Road Overlay District, especially if it was rezoned commercial. Yeah, I think it meets all the requirements, A through L, for rezoning. I think that parcel ought to be commercial. Things like car washes, those are special use. There's a list of businesses that are allowed by right and a group that are allowed by special use. And I look at the allowed by right list, and I think, yeah, any one of those would be fine at that intersection. I would caution that the special use category for that project site, that would require significant planning in order to have any kind of development that added stacking. So drive-throughs, anything that involved lines of cars would be a significant attention to detail. Other than that, I think it's a great idea. I think we should rezone it and make it more consistent with the surrounding parcels.
I just have one more question for the applicant. Just curious again. Are you looking at adjoining the adjacent property?
Yeah, to the south, yes.
It's too narrow. That one's just too narrow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Be wide. Once you get into setbacks, you're going to be hard-pressed to build a
We have
multifamily.
3 of the parcels.
It's going to also improve the circulation because it is close to that light, that portion.
Yeah, ultimately, there'll be shared cross-access through it, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that one little site, I couldn't see somebody putting in some sort of apartment complex on that. And to sit there as residential multiple.
I have a question for staff. There's a house on that property right now, right?
Yes.
Is it occupied? It is occupied? Does the changing of the zoning do anything with regard to the occupancy status of the house?
No.
Doesn't do anything, just makes it non-conform. We've just changed the zoning out from under it. Now it's a non-conforming use on the parcel, which normally we don't like to do, but in this case, seems reasonable. Is that?
The person who's living in the house can live there as long as they want to. It's still a legal, non-conforming use.
We actually added provisions in our zoning code where if the house catches on fire, or burns down, they're able to rebuild the house back at the same footprint and do certain things like that. We have some added protections to make sure that that's taken care of.
So if it was rezoned, sorry, Mr. Harvey, but if your project fell through and the owner of the house decided not to move out, they had the property rezoned out from under them, sort of. Not out from under them, they're standing there, but it's been rezoned, and they say have a catastrophic loss of the house, they'd be allowed to rebuild the house?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure we're not going to do, that we're not doing something that could harm a resident of the township.
They can rebuild, they can sell it as a home, they can live there forever. They're protected.
I have no problem rezoning this.
Are they renters? Must because it's owned by.
I guess my question is, who owns the property?
I know there's a for sale sign in front of it right now.
Commercial.
Ask Garana.
Can
Do you
just,
have a-
if that's in regard to the, who's in the house right now, is that the crux of the question?
Who's that property?
It should be on the application.
Dana Investment LLC apparently is the owner.
Contract to purchase the property from them. Right now, there is a renter in the house.
Okay.
Month. Once we close on the parcel, there's a grace period to give them time to move out. I don't know exactly how long it is, but that's the general sequence of events that will happen. If for whatever happens, the property does fall through, like you said, it's a legal non-conforming lot, but you end up with a parcel that's rezoned to the future land use designation on Belleville Road.
I just want to make sure that it wasn't the people that owned the house and it was asking a rezoning when, if you didn't own it, you can't
Yeah,
ask to have it
of course.
rezoned. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Contract with the current owners, and I believe they did sign the application. Otherwise, I don't think we could apply.
Staff will verify that, right, before we recommend it up?
Through the chair, I just have a question for the applicant. Your intention is to build a car wash, correct?
Right now, that's our current plan. I mean, we haven't submitted a plan or anything. We're still working through the overall design. We're actually very sensitive to some of the comments that were brought up just at this meeting regarding stacking, regarding traffic considerations to the light. But yes, to answer your question.
My follow-up question is, have you done any studies indicating that our community is in need of an additional car wash?
Yeah, we're currently finalizing our feasibility study. We got the letter, we knew that it was a requirement. Basically, we identified this area as an area that there is a need, but we'll fully flesh that out within our report that we'll be submitting with our site plan and special land use application.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
That is all I have.
Anybody else? Questions?
No.
Okay, then I would entertain some an action on this item.
Ms.
Ah.
Member of the public?
Member of the public. There's nothing in here for public discussion.
Oh, sit back down.
There's nothing in here about public discussion.
We'll proofread it better next time, Mr. Chairman.
Evening, Board. Just a brief,
Identify yourself for us, sir, please.
Ben Jr., resident of Van Buren Charter Township. Just really want to give an advisory to the Planning Commission. Not against the rezoning or anything like that, not against anything. But I do know that in the past, the Planning Commission has on the east side of Belleville Road, since the shopping center where Qdoba is and Starbucks, and also on down the road where Bell Tire is and whatnot, we have put in an access way to go from I-94 through up to, right now, Westlake, to kind of mirror what they have on the west side of Belleville Road. Just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. I don't know what they plan to put in. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. But I just wanted to bring that to the Planning Commission's attention, because that is what the, what I'll say, past planning commissions have implemented and intended to do. They intended to go from the North Service Drive all the way up to Tyler Road, depending upon what obstacles that are in the way. But this appears to be right at the top end of where that plan was put in place for. So that's all. I just want to bring that to everyone's attention for future plans. That's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Feel I should point out that that is trustee Boynton. He's a former member of this planning commission and used to sit in this chair for quite a while. And so we like it when he comes and he checks on our, gives us some input on how things have been done previously.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
And with that, do we have any other public comment? Anybody else wishing to make a comment? Anyone else? Then I would entertain a motion concerning the change in zoning.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make that motion. I would, at this time, we move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the requested amendment to the zoning map to the Township Board of Trustees, specifically to rezone parcel 830589900014-002 from RM Multiple Family Residential to C1 General Commercial, as described in the McKenna report dated February 19th, 2025. Also subject to the following condition, that a detailed legal description for the subject site must be provided prior to Township Board action.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, supported by Commissioner Creel, to change the zoning. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Bernie Grant, Peter Creel,
Yes?
Medina Atchison, Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. So we'll send that on to the Board of Trustees. Mhm. Item number 5, non-residential PUD ordinance draft discussion. Presentation by the staff. Director Akers.
Thank you. I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Krishnan, but I do want to highlight that we did make some adjustments based on the comments at the last meeting, and our township planner will go through them.
Thank you, Director Akers. Good evening, Planning Commission. Sorry I was not available to discuss the ordinance the last couple of times it was before you. I think Gage was over here. I got pulled into a couple of other crisis Planning Commission meetings on those two meeting dates. But I was there to make all the corrections. I believe last time there were a couple of concerns. I made changes to the ordinance. If you look at page, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't number the pages. Terrible of me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Page number 4, 6.505, districts and uses. I think there was a concern about whether gasoline filling stations are going to be just permitted over here, or I had clarified that they're going to be only ancillary to a principal permitted use, such as if it is going to be, say, an Ashley Crossroads. Ashley has got fueling, just like Costco has got. Costco has got pumps somewhere in the back over there only for their trucks, not for others. So I wanted to clarify that it'll be only for them, not for others. So I guess the language wasn't clear enough, so I added clarification that basically said under subsection 5, gasoline and diesel filling stations for automobiles or trucks shall be permitted only in conjunction with and as an ancillary to an industrial use. Freestanding commercial gas stations to serve the public shall not be permitted. So that way it's clear and there's no ambiguity or room for interpretation. I also added, I guess there was a question, what about natural gas substations? I think that question came up. So I added that clarification also. Utility substations, gas stations, natural gas substations, and other similar uses, structures that support industrial or commercial uses on a site shall be placed in a manner that conceals them from view of public rights of way. So it's not like it's right there in front.
Can we talk?
Yes, please.
Can you explain a scenario, what that means?
One of the concept plans we saw, they said if there is a substation, sometimes you see, I don't know if you have noticed some of DT's natural gas substation, they have this huge kind of tank kind of thing. Sometimes you just go past the road and it's just sitting there. So hoping that if some such thing comes to support an industrial use, it's not placed right on the road itself. They place it in a manner where maybe we can screen it a little bit so it's not so obvious. So it's built in over here that if it is needed to serve one of these buildings or something, it's not going to be right up there. And it's going to be.
So let's just say, so the concealment really is where you place it relative to a building to hide it. So what if they say, well, the best place for it is, and we're talking residential, adjacent residential areas, is up front near the road, 50 feet off the road. So how are they going to conceal that?
Manner that, okay, the language states that commercial uses on a site shall be placed in a manner that conceals them from view of public rights of way or adjacent residentially zoned parcels.
Right.
So the burden of proof is on them to demonstrate how they are going to conceal it.
Right.
So they need to come up with something that can convince the planning commission that it is actually concealed from view. We don't know what they're going to come up with, so that is up to their creativity. Maybe they will come up with a landscaping plan that makes it look like we don't even know what is behind that landscaping, or maybe there is a decorative wall or something like that, or a new decorative type of fence, or maybe a bamboo wall on which something grows, so we don't know what is behind it.
Okay,
So
okay, so we
it's-
don't have to define what concealment
don't have to
means.
define, because
Question I was
yeah, my worry always is if we put very strict limits on what it has to be, sometimes there are new creative ideas out there, and we have defined it so closely that there is an idea out there that our ordinance kind of blocks it out because we have not thought of it, or we didn't know that some such thing was out there. So I added that in to help clarify. Then I think the main change I made, if you go further in section 6.507 under design for building height, there was a question about building height. The problem is a lot of building heights vary depending upon use. So now a lot of uses that we are seeing in terms of when you go to research technology uses with data centers. In data centers, what we have is based upon the data banks that we have. If you look at the machinery and those processing units that are there, some of those are stackable. They're not like the olden days movie styles where there's only one row. Apparently, they're more fancy now. So currently, the way our ordinance is written in industrial districts, there is a building height. Once your building height limit, for every feet you go above that limit, each of your setbacks has to increase by a corresponding feet or 2 feet. So I added language in over here that says maximum permitted building height shall comply with the underlying zoning district as established in the ordinance, which means what is currently there in our zoning ordinance. Buildings of greater than the maximum height allowed in the zoning ordinance may be allowed by the Planning Commission in the PUD, provided the front, side, and rear yards are increased by 1 foot for each additional foot of building height that exceeds the maximum height allowed. Planning Commission shall make a determination on the maximum allowable building height based on building location and detailed line of sight diagrams demonstrating that increased building height will have no adverse impacts on the surrounding areas. So the reason why I did not put an upper limit on the actual building height is because I don't know what height is okay for data center buildings, or what height. We know for distribution centers, you can make do with buildings that are 42 feet. We know because we have seen in Ashley. We know for industrial or warehouse buildings, 35 to 38 feet is good enough. I don't know for research technology what would be a good height. So I want Planning Commission to be able to see it and say, you know, based upon where this building is located, with the increased setback, even though we say 1 foot based, it might result in a setback of 50 feet, and they might propose a setback of 150 feet. Even then, the Planning Commission might say, okay, it's so far away, it cannot even be seen based upon where it's located. It's okay. So I want you to be able to see it on a site plan and make a determination of what the upper limit is. I want there to be some flexibility, so I added that paragraph in there. The whole point of a PUD is to provide you with the flexibility to allow for better design. So that's why I put that paragraph in there so it is not so rigid.
But also with constraints. If it was just for better design, you would have said the planning commission can make the building as high as they want to make it. but that's not what you've done. What you've done is you put a constraint on it so that future planning commissions understand, yes, you can build a taller building than what is allowed under the following conditions. It has to
Correct.
be really far away from anything that can see it. The building has to look small from where you're standing.
And that is
So
why
it
line
isn't
of-
just for flexible design, it's also to place limitations on future planning commissions and to pass on the wisdom that we're trying to come up with for our future generations, right?
Line of sight diagrams. Line of sight diagrams are typically taken from public rights of way. So basically, it will be like slicing a cake. It'll be a north-south cross-section, it'll be an east-west cross-section. So a person who's standing on a street, if I take a slice across the road, what will it look like when I'm looking at the building? So the building is going to look like a tiny ant at that end of the spectrum. Or if I'm standing, how big is the building? Am I going to be looking like this, or am I going to be looking at it like this? So the line of sight diagrams will give you a clear visual of what it's going to look. So that's why I put that in. The line of sight diagram has been a very useful tool. I use it a lot in many of my clients where we have historic downtowns. So anytime we allow for buildings on other sides of downtown, I always put line of sight diagrams, because any building that is built around it, we always make sure that the building that is built around it has to provide line of sight diagrams so your new building does not overwhelm a historic downtown building. You don't want to detract from it. So the same principle applies over here. You're making sure that this building does not look so overwhelming that somebody who's standing in their home yard says, oh my God, I'm looking at this mammoth thing over there. It should look insignificant relatively, even though it's a big building. So that's the point. I also added in architectural interest. This paragraph was added based upon feedback received from the Planning Commission after you saw the last Ashley building. You said, should we keep sticking to the same kind of building again and again just because there is one? Are we going to keep sticking to the same one? So I added in some language that says facades of industrial buildings and structures which are visible from public rights of way. I don't want to require high quality. These buildings are huge. The cost of the building will just balloon out of proportion if you say you want brick and stone. But the portions that are visible from public rights of way, we can make those look better. So I just said, which are visible from public rights of way or a residential zoning district shall be provided with elements of architectural interest. These can be roof articulation, clerestory windows. These are interesting windows, which they're not functional windows. They're basically like fake type of windows, but they make it look like. You'll be able to define it better for me. I went online and I did, but I don't know how to explain what they are. Banding or columns made of brick, stone, or other high-quality material, trellises for climbing plants, architecturally interesting metalwork, enhanced loading door design, or something like that. So the Planning Commission shall consider the feasibility and practicality of such designs while reviewing architecture. I did put in architecture for commercial buildings shall comply with the standards. We already have commercial building architectural standards in our ordinance, so I just cross-referenced it. For industrial buildings, you know, something that makes the building not just look like what we used to build 20, 25 years ago down I-275. Maybe we need to upgrade a little bit from that. So that's the new language in there. And section 6.515, I made it, instead of calling it landscaping and lawns, I called it landscaping and screening because that's what it is. It's not lawns. Those are the changes. So this is draft number 5. It's my best effort so far.
Actually, number 6, I think. You missed a meeting. Yeah.
Please send it for public hearing. My best effort. You can do it. Send it for a public hearing.
Oh, it's so close, too.
Hear anything. It's public hearing time.
Discussion.
I want to know what the commissioner thinks.
I'm a little wishy-washy on the, the utility thing, but other than that, I could see it working. Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, at this point, I'm happy with it.
I was happy with it in the previous draft, and I think these changes are an excellent addition to it, and I'm glad you made them.
I like the flexibility, or emphasizing the flexibility we have through but the use of the PUD.
Creel, you were on the subcommittee, right? What are your thoughts?
after listening to all the discussion, I think this incorporates everything that was mentioned and talked about, and I like the changes as well. So, yeah, I like it.
Okay, let's set it for a public hearing. Agreed? Commissioners?
Agree.
Yeah. Took a vote, just a straw
Direction
poll
to
for
staff.
the most.
Thank you, Ms. Krishnan, for all the edits.
I'm so excited. Before you change your mind, make that motion.
And item number 5, non-residential. Six, I'm sorry. Battery energy storage system ordinance draft.
setting it for public
We have to set the public
Oh,
hearing.
do we have motion for it?
Happy to do it as a formal motion, Mr. Chairman. I move that we request staff to schedule a public hearing for the non-residential PUD ordinance draft.
We don't need a roll call for this, do we?
Unanimous, vote.
Motion is on. We've got to act on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And item number 6, battery energy storage system ordinance draft. Presentation by the staff. Director Akers.
Before turning it over to Ms. Krishnan, I'll just kind of give, I don't know, a brief overview. So Michigan updated, they changed the law last year called the Energy Siting Law. It created some provisions for renewable energy systems to allow systems of a certain size, be exempt from certain zoning procedures. The law does have a provision for which, basically what we're allowed to regulate and what we're not. There were 3 types of renewable energy features considered in that law. It was wind farms, it was solar energy panels, and these items called battery energy storage systems. So to be eligible for the law, the facilities have to be of a certain kilowatt capacity. The solar panels, to meet the kilowatt capacity, the sites need to be somewhere between 300 and 400 acres, and we don't have many of those properties in the township, so we don't believe we're going to have any concerns from that. The wind farms, I believe, need close to 100 acres. So we don't have many sites which can be eligible for that, where renewable energy facilities could be sited. However, these battery energy storage systems, you could have sites as small as 5 acres, which would meet the kilowatt requirements that to be considered under the law, where they could potentially, usurp our local ordinances. So based on that, and based on actually some meetings we had with some companies who are looking to do these type of facilities within the township, we felt it would be a good idea to put an ordinance in place. So Ms. Krishnan was very accommodating and being able to quickly draft us an ordinance that's compliant with the new law, and I will let her take it away.
Thank you, Director Akers. So we put together this draft of battery energy storage systems based upon, I think communities in Western Michigan have moved on this faster because they have more land area and they have felt this pressure a lot faster than we have over here. Thankfully, our area doesn't have too much pressure for wind energy farms as much as they have felt, thankfully. But these energy storage system farms, we are getting more and more pressure for it. And as Ron said, we already have somebody reach out to us about having a concept plan already in place for putting one such farm together. So we put together an ordinance, so we at least have something in place. If we don't have an ordinance in place, we'll have to follow whatever the state says we have to do. So we would rather have some guidelines on our own end in order to make this happen. So we amending the ordinance to include basically definitions. There are 2 different types of battery energy storage systems. They are classified as Tier 1 and Tier 2. Now, Tier 1 storage systems, basically, they're classified based upon their capacity. So Tier 1s are those that have an energy capacity that is less than or equal to 600 kilowatt hours. And these are basically the smaller systems that you would use for a home. You would use for a home or any of the smaller kind of applications. And tier 2 are those that have a capacity greater than 600 kilowatt hours, and those are mainly larger systems that harness the power from a grid. So those are located typically closer to any main DT power grids that take the surplus energy from it, store into that, and then feed it back into the grid or sell it to other customers. So we wrote an ordinance where tier 1 battery energy storage systems, this regulations that we have written closely mirrors what state law requires us to do, and then we put in some more of our own design features. The tier 1 battery energy storage systems will basically be permitted in all zoning districts as an accessory use, and that will follow the Michigan Building Code and the National Electric Code. It will be allowed in all the houses, just like you have all the car EV charging stations and garages and all that stuff. It will be sort of similar to that itself. The tier 2 battery energy storage systems, we are writing regulations to allow it only in our M1 light industrial district and our M2 heavy industrial district as a special land use. We are not allowing it in our ag districts. We are going to put it only in our industrial districts because our M1 and our M2 districts are not really located close to any residential areas. And where we have M1 and M2 available is not really located in close proximity where it can actually have a measurable impact on any one of our residential portions. We still have a lot of ag zone parcels where it can immediately impact neighborhoods or homes. So these tier 2 systems, we put in regulations based upon what state requires to have lighting. We have regulations for vegetation and tree cutting. That is basically clearing around these units. These units basically look like little storage containers, shipping containers. That's how they look. So you have to clear around them to prevent electrical fires, because if you have dry shrubbery around them, it will ignite. So you have to clear around them. They basically sit in a bed of gravel. So it's like all cleared gravel, and they are like boxes next to each other. I don't know if you have seen any pictures of them. They're like box after shipping container on a bed of gravel. So it's like a huge room or an acreage area with box filled with gravel. That's how they look. So there's nothing we can do about the interior, but what we can do is the perimeter of it, we can try to shield it as much as we can. So they're not very noisy. They just have they're about 60 decibels typically, and we limit it. You cannot exceed that noise, so it's like a hum, a General Electrical hum kind of noise. There are regulations for decommissioning them if they go out of commission, just like you have for cell towers. If a cell tower ever goes out of commission, what do you do? Then, the cell tower needs to be removed. There is a fund for all of that. After that, we put in some of our zoning regulations in terms of setback. Depending upon whether it's located in M1 or M2, it needs to follow the M1 or M2 setback requirements itself. It needs to follow the maximum height limitations for those districts. All of those, if they are located anywhere, they need to be fenced in. State law doesn't specify what kind of fencing, so we put in fencing requirements that the fencing has to be decorative aluminum or wrought iron, not chain link. Everything that is visible from public rights of way has to be decorative wrought iron aluminum. At least if you're going to have it fenced, at least let it look nice. It's going to be fenced and inside over there. Any of these tier 2 energy storage systems shall be subject to landscaping requirements of our zoning ordinance. We have really robust landscaping requirements already. So it will be subject to those landscaping requirements itself. And any additional landscaping, depending upon what these M1 or M2 parcels abut, Planning Commission under special land use considerations can require additional landscaping to screen neighboring properties. To the extent feasible and practical, the storage units should incorporate architectural features. The person we spoke to who had one of these, we asked them, can these units be made to look any better than a shipping container? He said, yes, some municipalities have asked for this, so we try to make them look architecturally better. I don't know how you can make them look better, so we don't want to put in any requirements in there that are just ridiculous and not practical. After all, they are energy units, so I'm not sure what we can tell them to add to them. So that's why I put to the extent practical. I don't know how far the industry has progressed in making them look better, but I'm thinking at a minimum, they can at least paint them maybe a forest green or something to make them nondescript.
Could
so
we
that-
require the perimeter of the fencing to be trees, shrubs, things of that nature to?
That is already in here. Not only are we going to have decorative black wrought iron or painted aluminum fence, you're then going to have landscaping all around it. And then within that, maybe these units can be painted like a forest green or something. And if they can make these units look any better, maybe.
Deter graffiti, right?
We can put Bernie on it.
Because it says here, height, Tier 2 battery energy storage systems shall comply with the building height limitations for principal structures of the underlying zoning. That seems like it can get big.
How big are these units, Ron? Do you remember?
With the companies we met, the way they were described to us is they're basically shipping containers.
They're road, you can deliver them by road.
But then why would you have that in here?
Because you might have
Pile
electrical
them on top of
infrastructure.
each other.
Well, that's not a shipping container. It's like turning into a building. I mean, but it's not a building, it's a utility, right? It's like a huge transformer.
Our
building, though,
building
isn't it?
district,
These things, when you pile,
Treating it as a
when-
building, though, aren't we? It's just they're using a shipping container to build it.
good point. So our M1 and M2 district building height requirements are 30 and 35 feet. Can we put in regulations, I need to check with the state law, that these units cannot be stacked one on top of the other? I don't know, how tall is a shipping container?
About 10 feet.
About 10
It's gotta be
feet.
less than 14 feet.
15 feet?
I mean, when it's on track, but it's about 12 feet,
Can
probably.
you stack these on top of one another?
you're gonna get,
Real shipping containers you can, yeah.
But can BESS units be stacked?
I don't know.
Requirement would also include any of the electrical substation infrastructure. You know, when DTE comes and puts those metal things up with a bunch of transformers and power lines coming off of them, does the height restriction, does that allow
Not for
the
public utilities. We don't regulate height for public utilities.
utility? This is a battery energy storage system for a non-public utility, right?
similar to a substation.
I have a question. Are these, what are we calling them, storage units? Are these storage units going to be accessed by whoever owns them? Because I'm assuming that they're creating this battery, then they have to put it in storage until somebody comes along and buys it.
No, so what these companies do is they usually locate near some of the larger like ITC transmission lines. And what they'll do is they'll set up these large facilities and they'll buy power from the company when the price of power is low, and then during peak periods they sell power back into the grid. So we were told they're longer term investments, but no, they're just going to sit there, they're not going to move, and then they're going to move power back and forth into the grid, in and out of the grid, excuse me.
That's why I was asking about the grid connections, right? Because it is a utility.
So, a development, say, on one of our new PUD zoned areas might want to use these, or they might go and partner with someone that will supply this for them if they find out they can get cheaper energy that way, perhaps.
These are typically located where there is existing utility grid. They have to be located near an existing utility grid.
Right, and with a,
Power lines or
Yep.
something.
I wouldn't think we'd want them stacked.
Huh?
We can't find any stacked.
so you're saying that it would never end up in a PUD then, right?
I mean,
There's
how firm a foundation are they gonna sit on?
Gravel.
They sit on a concrete base. So they sit like on a concrete base. They don't sit directly on the ground itself. There's gravel. They sit on concrete cinder blocks kind. The shipping container sits on top of it. So can you yeah, can you just plug it in so we can see what these
So are you saying that these things would never be part of any type of industrial development or manufacturing development?
Probably
They
only
could
if they
be.
were near high-power tension lines, would be my assumption.
So do we know where they are in our community that they would more than likely be placed? Because we know where those are, right?
I would assume my thought, from what you're saying, would be down where the power lines,
That goes all the way
yeah,
down?
that goes That's the only ITC that we have in the community, I
Can't be
believe.
too many in a community. You can't have too many buses because how much utility surplus are you going to have? And the one, okay.
Say that here, though.
I just looked up, battery energy storage systems and a couple examples. It doesn't show any being stacked.
Yeah,
As you can see, there's
gotta be heavy.
sitting on gravel on concrete pads.
Plus you have to maintain them. You're not gonna.
Yeah, you don't want to
I
stack
gotta-
them.
You're gonna have to build a stair around it.
They are a beautiful white canvas, though, aren't they? Something, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You don't want an unattended, not monitored facility to be attractive nuisance for
can't
graffiti.
go too
That's
high.
what people do with train cars, right?
Fencing around it.
So that might be something.
Your
you know,
question on
design-
the transmission lines, it looks like they're all buried too. And that's part of this, is that we want them to be buried. First page, bottom.
You want to highlight that planning and zoning specialist, Brittany Williams, found a picture online where they are stacked. So- No, it's good, but it's good. We have to think about
I'll
these
find
things.
out what is the maximum height these units can
Yes,
go
that
up to.
was-
That's, what is the
It feels
max
like
height?
we need to know a little
Fine.
bit more about them.
Need to find out the height.
Oh, I should clarify, I did put in the fencing requirements that planning commission can make a decision if somebody wants, because security is a big concern, right? These are high-powered units. The planning commission can, just like when DT came with its ASOC facility, the planning commission decided to allow for some barbed wire on their fence for security. You don't want anybody climbing into those facilities. So if necessary, you can make a determination on a fence style to secure the facility, so nobody tries to climb into these. Last thing you want somebody getting up.
A bit more about where we think potentially they would be, so that you could maybe relate those to whatever's adjacent to it, if that needs to happen.
Do we,
I mean, I just feel like I don't know enough about it.
well, and do we know if some of the bigger ones, like I see in the middle of that screen right there, is next to a building?
One in the middle.
Are they used for battery backup for like data storage centers? Or
I imagine they probably could be, because I think they could be used for a lot of different purposes.
That's a use case that I would think, instead of if they don't have access to a gas generator, or they have to have triple redundancy on power, then it would be a battery backup, like the old ones that used to sit underneath my desk, right? But it's on a larger scale.
Oh, you think a facility like this would maybe give out a unit if a data center was likely to lose power, they would rent out one of these units to give alternate power.
Or if they generate, I don't know if they would generate enough power that they could throw it into it. I know dynos, if they're running dynamometers, that can create power, throw it back onto the grid.
How'd we get to 600 kilowatt hours for the cutoff between tier 1 and tier 2?
That is the state.
It
That's
says
the
that?
state- That's the state
Okay.
definition, I pulled it off of there.
I think with the data center thought, I've worked in data centers that have a lot of batteries. I don't know, 600 kilowatt hours is like one house for a month. But I don't know how much power a big data center actually has on backup,
they
right?
drain
It's
so much.
huge. Oh, they suck down a lot, but they also have redundancy, right? So if the idea is that we want to, leave all of the home uses alone, and we want to go after the battery energy storage system people, and it's determined that they're a battery energy storage system based on that 600 kilowatt hour cutoff, I don't want to say, I don't want the next data center to come in and look at it and go, wait a minute, I'm not a battery energy storage system. I just have redundant power for my 300 racks of computers. I don't know if that has come into, or if you thought about that or not, right?
So
I wonder if there needs to be some language around outdoor battery storage or utility battery storage,
this particular ordinance is addressing BESS as a standalone use. This is somebody who's doing BESS as a standalone use. But if you have, say, the Chase facility, they have a few of these battery energies as an ancillary to support their principal business. That's different. They are a data center which is using this as backup power. That's different.
I would almost think it was the same as like a gas generator.
Yeah, like an accessory use.
Yeah.
Yes, accessory to a primary use is
Like
okay.
Ricardo got the propane tank or whatever outside to do their testing or whatever, hydrogen or whatever.
Based on this ordinance, you could end up with that upper right or more.
Which upper
Oh,
right?
that is a double whammy. It's got those wind thingies also over there.
You could end up with that many or more, I don't know.
That's also protected under the new, from what I understand, it's protected under the state law and.
Make it that large?
Wind thingies. What are
Can
those
we
called?
restrict the size
Yes,
of it, or?
yes. I'm losing it.
To answer that, I don't know.
Wind thingies.
Yeah, according to the state law, they can make it as large as they want, right? Such as in the upper right-hand photo that's there?
They need a certain amount of land. How much is that land, Ron? They need a lot of land for doing above a certain, there is cutoff of different acreage. I'll bring that to you. The state law has got, in order to generate so much power, you need so much acreage, and that's a big chunk of land. I don't think we have that much land available over here in our township.
Well, in the beginning, you said 5 acres, right? That's the minimum?
Minimum.
They gave an example of how much land it would take to have a facility that could generate the electricity that meets the minimum requirements in the state statute. So for solar and wind, it was very, very large properties, but for these best facilities, I think it was 5 to 10 acres was.
Now, is that at 600 megahertz?
Yes.
Okay.
That was my understanding. I can get confirmation on the numbers and everything, but there are smaller, tighter sites where these could come in, meet the state guidelines, and be exempt from certain zoning requirements.
But to get such huge spread out things, I don't think we have any such big parcels, especially since we are talking only about M1 and M2 district. We are not talking about ag parcels. We only have huge ag parcels. M1, M2, our parcels are pretty limited in size, the ones that we have left.
I think this looks like it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah. But can we restrict the size of it? Can we be more strict than what the state is? We can't.
No, state says you can have more, like, state allows us to have more fencing, maybe more landscaping. You're allowed to do all that, but you're not allowed to dictate how big they can be, how small they can be. State decides all that.
Okay.
Well, I think for the items that sounds like we're allowed to specify, it looks like this specifies it. I can't think of anything else right off
I'll
the top
bring
of my
back
head.
some more information on whether these units can be stacked, what's the maximum height it can be, and what is the breakdown for, in terms of size, what acreage you need for the various size. I can bring that to you. And then we will probably have to move on this fast to set it for a public hearing, because you have people approaching you for, we want to have something in place because we have nothing right now.
See this go to public hearing by the.
As soon
end of-
as possible.
Yeah, end of March, 1st of April.
Be March 26th, I believe.
That matches, March matches February.
Talking about the height, though, it doesn't really matter if someone can come in and make it what they want, right?
Or changes.
Well, as any
potential.
other building in the M1 or
That's
M2
controversy.
district, right? If they can stack them as
Well-
high as a.
Well,
You can go ahead and set this for public hearing, but I'll bring this information to you at your next
address
meeting. Why
that.
don't you go ahead and set it for a public hearing?
they can do what they want anyway, right? Is
Yeah,
what
this
I'm hearing.
limits, this
So,
limits.
So through the chair,
I would agree with her. If we could just know what the limitation are, we can't, so we don't tell them they can go forever.
I guess procedural question we're kind of discussing here. Can we recommend public hearing, and then the questions that we have can be brought to the next meeting so we can get this on public hearing for the second meeting in March?
Yes, so, yes, so,
Yeah.
so procedurally, too, just for clarification, even if it goes towards a public hearing and a recommendation, if the planning commission finds out information at that meeting,
We can make
you
changes.
can change it at the table. So if there are adjustments or changes, those changes can be made, or the planning commission can recommend it conditionally with certain changes. I mean, there's ways you can do it.
Okay.
Set this for March 26th public hearing, and I'll bring that information to you. Maybe before then, if I can, I'll bring it to you before then.
Did Commissioner
Be
Creel
great.
make a motion?
Oh, did you make a motion that we're setting this to public hearing?
I would be happy to make a motion. So I move to set a public hearing for March 26th? On the ordinance introduction of battery energy storage system ordinance draft. Support that motion.
Okay. Since we're sending this public hearing, we don't need, is there any discussion on the motion? Shouldn't need a roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Okay, that leads us to general discussion and updates. Do you have anything for us, Director Akers?
Oh, it's a long meeting, so I will be brief. So for the next upcoming meetings, the meeting on March 12th, we will have a final site plan approval for Costco, and then we're having temporary land use permits at that meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we will have 2 temporary land use permit applications for firework tents. And then at the meeting at the 26th, that will be a bit of a busy meeting. So we will have public hearings on these 2 zoning ordinance amendments. We're going to have a public hearing for Ashley Capital. They're proposing to rezone some properties on Haggerty Road that they have since acquired. It's in front of the Crossroads North. It's between Ecorse and Van Born. So they're doing a proposal to rezone those. There's going to be a final site plan approval for Tractor Supply. And I think that's it. And there might be some rezoning discussions thrown in there too. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that I know many of you know we've been talking about the Redevelopment Ready Communities program. We've been working on it for a long time. We finally have become a Redevelopment Ready certified community through the MEDC. So that was made official a few weeks, or last week, 2 weeks ago. So the MEDC is actually coming out. They're going to be doing a site visit, you know, and then give a plaque and everything. So we are there are only 3 communities in Wayne County that have received the designation. So it's us, Romulus, and Dearborn. So we're doing pretty good, and we're very excited, and a lot of people worked on it. So we're very, very happy.
Good.
So, thank you. The last thing that I want to add is I know we have an individual here who wanted to address the commission as well. I think she missed the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. I was hoping that you guys would be willing to give her an opportunity to.
She
get
sat
up
through
and
all of
speak.
us, absolutely.
Through the chair, I do have some, for open discussions, I just want to send after her. She's been waiting a long time.
I'm here begging. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I had notes, but I'm gonna make it quick. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys. I was here before. I was the first group home in Downriver for the group home. Yay! With that being, I've also had 2
Would you
other.
please introduce yourself for us, please?
Yes. Hi, I am Danielle Sizemore. I am the owner of Building of Learning Group Home Child Care Center. And I was just stating that I would like, you know, since you guys granted me, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm nervous. You guys granted me the opportunity to turn into a group home. There have been 2 other group homes after me. So they thank you as well. But I'm coming to you today. I do need my notes on this part. I'm sorry, guys. Mr. Ron, I thought you were going to help me.
I can help you if you'd want.
I said I'm reaching out to express my interest in opening a child care center in Van Buren Township with a capacity of 25 to 30 children. The property I'm considering is located on I-94 Service Drive near the old Suzuki dealership. So I guess the Suzuki dealership is now being turned into a laundromat. I understand that this property is
Down by
current.
Diamondback.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was like, where are
Proper-
we talking?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Diamondback brought me to the location. Okay. we're
Okay.
good.
Diamondback, Suzuki,
What does that say?
a little
I'm
cute
tired.
property. I understand that this property is currently zoned under commercial classifications CC1 and C2. Is there a CC?
C1.
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 haven't heard any CCs, that's why I was, okay. And that a child care center would require approval under special land use. I am requesting that this property be permitted as a by right rather than under special land use. Per Mr. Akers. If,
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. If this child center was a right by use instead of a special land use, I would only be in need of a floor plan and to pay the basic limited fees. However, under the special current land use designation, my cost would exceed $20,000, which I definitely do not have. This creates significant financial burdens, and I'll leave the rest. I won't read the rest. But I'm here asking, please, if any possible way that this could be considered. There is a big paragraph on what could be placed there, but a child care center is not one of them. I currently have a waiting list of 20 to 30 children. I get calls almost every day, and my home can only hold 12. I get calls every day telling me people are moving to this area, I'm moving to this area, and I cannot accommodate these people. I am at full capacity, so are the other centers. I would love to build, not build, but to take this little building that hasn't did anything in the last 5 years and make it a beautiful site in the Van Buren Township District. But I would like to be able to put my money towards making it a beautiful site versus making it, versus putting $20,000 in to a property that is not mine. And that's it. I'm sorry.
Just to kind of give a highlight for some of our internal processes. So our zoning code requires, so childcare centers are special land uses in our zoning code. And per zoning code, if you go through special land use, you also have to go through a full site plan review, which is preparing significant documents, going through the engineering process and having professionally prepared site plans for an existing facility. So what's essentially being requested is if the planning commission were willing to consider daycare centers as a permitted use in our commercial zoning districts as opposed to a special use. That way, when you reoccupy industrial or commercial buildings, those go through an administrative procedure, and the costs tend to be lower. From what I understand, I've been told there's a demand for it. And I know when I was approached with it, and when we discussed what the application proceedings, everything looked like, it was one of those items where, I had indicated that if you want to make an adjustment to that portion of the code, addressing the planning commission and seeing how they felt about it, or if they were willing to ask us to look into it would be the next step. So, if the planning commission would like us to look into it, I will sit down with our planning staff and see what we can do.
Is there a reason why there's the permitted uses like adult childcare centers and schools, primary or secondary, those are all permitted uses, but we single out childcare centers?
So group daycare centers in the group daycare centers in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, in group daycare centers, I believe it's 7 to 12 kids. It's specified in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act that those are to be considered as special land uses because they can be considered in residential areas. I think the reason why our zoning ordinance in the commercial district requires special land use for the higher volume ones is because of there's traffic considerations, because you have really, really high traffic volumes first thing in the morning and at pickup. And then there's also an outdoor component where they have a playground outside and kids' activities outside because they're required to have that per state guidelines. So I think that's why it's considered primarily as a special land use. I don't know if Vidya, you had anything to add?
Yes. Whenever there is children and child daycare, it's one of the fundamentals of planning and zoning, public health, safety, and welfare consideration. So you're talking about traffic, you're talking about little children being dropped off, being picked up. There have been lots of issues where safety considerations for children. So basically, the drop-off and pickup all takes place at the same time. So that is one of the most important things. So that is the reason why it is placed under special land use, because you look at traffic patterns, you look at children's play area, you look at the fencing, you look at the landscaping, you look at a lot more considerations. That is why it is placed in the special land use criteria. And the only way you can take it out of the special land use criteria is to go through a full zoning text amendment process. You'll have to do it just the way you do any text amendment. You'll have to change your zoning ordinance. Planning Commission will have to have a public hearing, make a recommendation to a board of trustees, and then change the ordinance. And to make such a change, you will have to justify why you're singling out this use to be removed and why not any other use. Then you will have to justify why any other use cannot be removed from the special land use list.
I did want to clarify that
So,
during pickup time, a child care center is not a high-traffic area because parents have to be at work at different times and they also get off of work at different times. So that was one of the concerns that you guys had with me being a home child care center, the traffic, and there is none. There is, I mean, I have, as you've noticed, I haven't had a single complaint from any parents going from 7 to 12. But I'm just hoping that you guys would consider, I don't understand why I wouldn't be, I'm actually should be considered a school versus being considered I'm not a group home, I'm a school. And I would be a school, not, I'm a child care center. But I am a school, I have education and degrees in the child care field where my children are being taught. And I'm just trying to provide childcare for the people, for the community. We say we're looking for the best interest of Van Buren Township and the people within it, but they're going outside of Van Buren to find childcare instead of being able to stay. I mean, I've had some opportunities to open a child care center in Detroit. And the only other place that I chose not to go was Romulus. I would like to stay where I live. I mean, I'm
What we can do, because we are constrained, as Ms. Krishna pointed out, we are somewhat constrained by what the state says and by the Enabling Act and what is classified as special use. But we'll turn it over to staff and see what they can find for you
okay.
to try to alleviate your situation, if that's feasible for you.
Absolutely, and I appreciate everyone's time. I really do. I thank you guys.
Oh,
I just have some questions. I mean, I applaud you for, looking at that facility because I don't think anything has been successful that has gone into that location. I am familiar with it. You mentioned something in your opening about $20,000. Would that be improvements that you would have to put into that building to make it a daycare?
That's all engineering and
I would be, right.
The landlord would have to do that then?
No, that would be me working out the special use.
Okay.
presenting it to us.
Issues.
Presenting it to us and having staff do the reporting. That's a cost to get the permission.
To that building. I would love that. I mean, I've spoken to the caregiver of the property, not the landlord, but the things that I could do to that building with $20,000, I seriously don't have 20. And I've looked into other places. You guys have a lot of speculations on what you can, where you can and you can't put a child care center in Van Buren, unlike Belleville. I thought we were, I know there's a line somewhere, but.
Depends on what road you're on, yeah.
But
Don't try to figure it out on Sumter Road.
it's awesome. When I say I will put a fence around that building, the playground area, the location is just awesome. I looked into it with Dan Powers, and he was trying to work some things with me, and we just never got anywhere. But I would love, if you guys would consider, I think this would be a great property for a child care center.
Chairman, I think that we've had this discussion before about childcare in Van Buren Township, how we want it, we want to encourage it. The fee schedule for getting special land use is high. Clearly, it's high. And I think that it is worth directing staff to look at the pros and the cons, because I believe there are probably some pretty, it's all good. I think you do a great job, but, we've got to protect the community for everybody and for everything, and that's part of that health, safety, and welfare that we're charged with protecting. So a brief report detailing, what are the issues from a planning and zoning standpoint, both pro and con. I would be very willing to read that report and consider it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I have directed.
And the state would probably be really happy with us too, and it would help us with, we're, ready for redevelopment certified.
And that's, I think,
Daycare, I hear it from everybody that I meet along the way.
directed you to go forth
Make it
and see
happen,
what we
Ron.
can have,
Let the force
what
be
we
with
can
you.
do.
We'll definitely take a look at it. So thank you.
Do I direct that now to Brittany, that's on her shoulders?
Let the force be with you, Brittany.
We'll all work together and figure it out.
I know you all do, but we'll do what we can for you.
So much. Thank you, guys.
General discussion, you had a couple of it.
I just wanted to say some things. I went down Haggerty Road today. I didn't need my helmet. It was very nice.
Four-wheel drive.
I'm getting phone calls from some business owners along Belleville Road. They're concerned. They hear that there's new restaurants coming in and they have some concern. And I'm not really sure what to tell them other than we live in America, and if we can zone, they can build it. And I'm not really sure how to handle those questions. I've advised them to call you, Ron. And I really don't know what else to say. And then we always, and I know it's late, you guys, we always seem to forget about talking about the Lakeview Shopping Center. Is there a way, and I've asked this before over the years, is there a way that we can do something that sends out something to some developer on that property? I know Top Golf looked at it one time, Dave and Buster's, whatever we can put there, it's very dilapidated. And now you hear a lot from the community that we have two locations. We have one now developing on Belleville Road, and now we have the existing one, the old Kmart. So it's kind of concerning, like maybe the daycare facility could go into there, but then there's no playground, so.
So I know with the Lakeview Shopping Center, excuse me. So we're doing our master plan housing update, and at the prior meeting, the Planning Commission asked us to make sure that we were considering that site as part of the development. So Ms. Christian and I have been working with Donovan Smith, the planner, and we're going to be taking a heavier look at that site for our housing and master plan update. So we're going to be hoping to look at that and potentially give it some other development options. And once we kind of get the tools in place, we'll be able to hopefully work with the developers a little bit more closely and try to get something going. But we are paying attention to it. It is on the focus. If you look at a lot of the plans that we've updated with our marketing strategy and our economic development strategic plan, that's been a highlighted property that we acknowledge and know that's out there, and know we need to try to partner with the developers to come up with a strategy to breathe some life into it. So it's going to be, it's on the radar.
What about mentioning what's happening at the Camping World site just for the next few days?
Yes, so we have granted a preliminary or a temporary approval rather for Camping World to stage trailers. So they're bringing trailers up, they're staging them on the parking lot to take to the RV show in Novi. They've completed all of their site improvements. They're doing some work on the inside of the building now to try to open back up, but we've given them, I think it was a month or 2 weeks?
2 weeks. The RV show is in Kobo.
Yes.
So they're just staging it over here for 2 weeks, prepping it. They'll take it there. And as soon as it's over, they'll take all the trailers away, but they're nearing close to completion. Everything is almost done.
Do they have a target of when they want to open?
I have not received a specific date as of yet, but I know they're getting closer.
Yeah, he said the fence is all in, the parking lot is sealed and everything, just the propane tank needs to come in. The landscaping is almost all in. The interior of the building is nearly done, and I think Brittany said inspections, building inspections are almost nearly.
Yeah, they're all past the rough inspections and they're getting ready for final for most of their permits.
So they're moving fast towards completion. We spoke to the contractor who came and spoke to both of us at the counter, and he really wants to be done with the project, and he's really moving fast on it. So they should be done soon.
Anybody? I wanted to ask one question. I noticed, I went down Haggerty Road as well, which, as I go to my sisters in Canton, I noticed on Van Born Road, east of Morton Taylor, not quite to the Ashley Capitol. There's some heavy equipment there and some clearing. Is there something going into that area?
If it's, and I'll double check, but if it's the site that I think it's at, there was a property that Ashley Capital owns that they're doing for wetland remediation for one of their Eagle permits that they had on a site somewhere in the metro region. But so we had looked at a set of plans. There's some areas that they're going to be clearing and grading and seeding with wetland plants and doing that within that area. I know they started doing some of the clearing last year, but I'm going to double check and make sure it is the property that I think it is. But pretty sure that's what it is.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing is that I do read The Independent, and I was sorry to hear, first of all, I didn't realize your age, Mrs. Otzman. I didn't think you were that old.
Frankly, I assumed it was an editorial misprint.
Misprint. And I understand your need to back away, but you will be missed when and if that happens, because you provide this township with more information than we could get anywhere else. And I really appreciate the work that you do, and may not agree with everything you write. And that's one of the things with being in journalism and in the public. But as far as that is concerned, what you do is highly appreciated. And I wanted to thank you, and I believe the board here as well, because you present us upfront and make sure that the community knows, if they want to know, what's going on with their commissions. So thank you. And with that, anybody else have anything? Then I would entertain that motion. I believe it's called for adjournment.
Through the chair. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
We have a motion to adjourn with support. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're done. I was going to say, is your back hanging in there?